Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field." Put your foot down, this rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6, ladies and gentlemen. We have reached Friday, the 18th of July. An incredible week that we've had. I have to say, it's been one of the most extraordinary weeks of news, and that's saying something for us because we've had so many extraordinary weeks of news in this year already, only in July. But quite frankly, this one, with the Afghanistan scandal, with all the ramifications from it, with this news that, migrants are now eating up quite a lot of our benefits budget, with the news now that Keir Starmer wants 16-year-olds to vote, with the news that basically Wimbledon's happened. Now we've got the golf going on in Portrush in Northern Ireland. Rory McIlroy's on the front pages. Britain forced to pay the EU under Labour's Brexit reset is what it says on the front page of the Telegraph. The Times goes with Afghan data leak named British spies and soldiers as well. They've got some really good pictures as well of the Chelsea pensioners at their Royal Hospital home after replanting the Chelsea pensioners' gold-winning garden from the Chelsea Flower Show. That's quite nice. The BBC go ranting on about the whole Greg Wallace and John Turode scenario. They've got Turode's race slur is a Kanye West rap song. Apparently he got up at some point and started singing a Kanye West rap song, which includes the famous N-word. I'm not sure if that's the worst thing that could have happened. He's out of a job. And the Daily Mail goes with police to use facial recognition cameras at the Notting Hill Carnival. Well, I mean, we've got so much to talk about and plenty of time to do it in, really. We've also got an olive branch being offered to the junior doctors by Wes Streeting. The French migrant police are basically saying we are powerless to stop them. So I want you to remember this phrase. This is something that is going to be said throughout the show this morning. Donnez de la tête, which apparently says we are helpless, we don't know what we're doing. That's apparently the phrase on every lip of every French gendarmerie on the Normandy coast. Donnez de la tête. So I just wanted to try and practice it. And of course, we will be able to listen to your various... When you send your voice messages in, just start with Donnez de la tête. And that way you'll definitely get on. Jaguar we're still looking at. After Keir Starmer claimed that he had saved the company because of the great deal that he'd done with the Americans on trade deals, right? He said... unfortunately, they've lost 500 jobs. We mentioned it yesterday, but the Jaguar Land Rover scenario continues to be a complete and utter nightmare. Reeves under fire on the front page of the Financial Times. Britain sheds jobs for a fifth month. Staff numbers are down 41,000 in June. I think the total number is 178,000 jobs gone from the payroll of the United Kingdom. Payroll employment, that is. Fifth month in a row, staff numbers down. Budget and trade war with the US is what's being blamed for it, but, you know, it's all going pretty horribly wrong, isn't it? Tom Slater's here as well. Tom, very good morning to you. We've got plenty to do. Also, we'll be talking about half of parents want summer holidays slashed because they can't stand the little blighters running around their ankles for the entire month of August and a bit of September and some of July as well. Also, that fantastic video, which we will have to play you, of a tech tycoon exposed at a Coldplay show with his arms around a woman he shouldn't have had his arms around. Very, very funny. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This, of course, is Morning Glory. We will be back right after this. Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. Tom, very good morning to you. A bit of a mixed bag this morning, really, but I mean, it's been quite a week, hasn't it? I mean, when we sort of look back on what Keir Starmer's done, he seems to be getting more robotic with every week that passes. You know, I don't quite know what exactly is going wrong, but what I do know, I wrote a piece in the Sun this week saying, you know, this Afghan story is such a scandal. It's so horrendous and so ridiculous and tells you everything that you hate about basically the establishment in this country, how they'd love to keep things secret from you, how they don't want you to know about things, how they've wasted billions and billions of pounds, and they're about to waste even more billions, according to the Telegraph. I just don't see how he survives. I know I say it a lot, but I just don't see how he does.
The only thing that he could be protected by, I think, is the lack of other options.
Yeah.
Just because he is the one who won the general election, just because, you know, even some of his challengers, Wes Streeting, could well lose his seat if a hastily called general election was made.
Yeah.
So that's not a very positive spin, though, is it? It would be purely because of the fact that the Labour Party in general is a busted flush. That would mean that Keir Starmer stays in power.
I mean, have you? I haven't asked you this before, but I mean, have you ever seen anything like this collapse of any government within the short space of time they've been in?
No, not at all. I was saying to the other day, I think Keir Starmer is in with a shout as being our most disastrous Prime Minister ever. It's not to say that he hasn't got, you know, there are other people with much bigger scandals, much bigger disasters on their rap sheet, if you like. But the fact that he can't do anything, like he can't govern, he can't act, he can't get any reform through Parliament, even though he's got this enormous majority. I genuinely don't think we've ever seen someone as useless as this. That's it, like his defining characteristic.
You know? Yeah, when he did that thing last week in the podcast and described himself as a hard bastard, and we did it on Plank of the Week, and Jeremy Kyle actually said, well, how about useless bastard? Because that's kind of what he is. I mean, that's really the word. Useless is the one. If you ask people out there on the street, you know, can you give me one word to describe Keir Starmer? It would probably be useless.
No, absolutely. And the problem is that might be okay if the world was ticking over just about all right, if economically we're in a decent place, if there weren't burning social issues and divisions that needed to be attended to. But it's just having a useless politician in a time of multiple enveloping crises is a terrible combination. I think that's what we're seeing now.
It really is, because, as you say, we've got plenty of international things going on to worry about, but he's managing to kind of take the attention away from that and focus it on himself and the uselessness of his own party, because he's now embroiled in sort of suspending Labour MPs, including Diane Abbott yesterday, which is never going to end well for somebody like him, because when he goes up against people like that, you know, they will dig in. Diane Abbott will bury him. Diane Abbott, for whatever you may think of her, is a veteran MP. She's the mother of the house, I believe, even though she wears two different shoes and, you know, likes to drink. The bottom line is that Diane Abbott will literally bury Keir Starmer because he hasn't got the wherewithal to take people like her on.
No, absolutely. And also, there was just no plan. I mean, if you're going, obviously this all relates back to that ridiculous, you know, letter she wrote to the Observer all those years ago, appearing to downplay anti-Semitism. Yeah. But again, if you were going to kick her out for that, why did you let her back in? Only to kick her out again. And it's Keir Starmer is often desperate to kind of take on the left of the party, but when he does, he can even make a hash of that, which is bizarre when you think about how little.
But then he'll take them on,
but
yet he won't sort of, you know, make policy which is going to upset them. You know, it's kind of like, you know, he takes them on, and then you get the welfare bill, and they all go on the back benches. Oh, sorry, we're not going to have this. You can't take money away from the disabled people. You can't take money away from the unemployed. You can't take money away from the, you know, the downtrodden, the poor. And he goes, OK then, we'll just rewrite the whole bill, and we won't do any of that. You know, it's almost as though he hasn't got the courage of his convictions.
Especially because, like, the Labour left, you know, or some of them kind of in exile now that they've been kicked out of the party, they're a pretty pathetic bunch. They're nowhere near as dynamic, nowhere near as kind of strong-willed as they were many decades ago, and yet this Labour government is almost more willing to kind of bend over for them, which is bizarre given the size of that majority.
And of course
again,
now we've got this other
it?
situation where we've got this other Jeremy Corbyn stroke Zara Sultana party, which might be just a flash in the pan and not very interesting. However, the one poll that we've seen, which is not particularly reliable, says basically that if there was a general election tomorrow, half the Labour vote might go to them.
No, and that's something which really can't be written off of the agenda, because I understand that these things, it could just blow up. I mean, they couldn't even launch properly, you know, Zara Sultana claiming
they couldn't agree on who was in charge, could
exactly. So, I mean, that was incredibly doesn't bode well, does it? But at the same time, you know, Jeremy Corbyn kept his seat at the last general election, even though he was kicked out of the Labour Party. There are still a lot of people in the kind of university towns, in a lot of the cities, who are angry with Keir Starmer from the left rather than from the right, and therefore that could be a big problem for them. Even if it doesn't mean that new party winning seats, just depriving Labour of seats could be an interesting thing.
Absolutely right. Let's kick things off. We've got a few clips. Obviously, we'll talk about the vote going to 16 and 17-year-olds, which is a completely mad idea, by the way. But this is Starmer. Yesterday, he had the German Chancellor in, right? He's had a whole series of people coming to visit him, including the Czechia, as he called it, the Prime Minister, which we all thought was rather funny. But this is Chancellor Merz and Keir Starmer saying whatever he's going to say here. See if you can figure out what this means.
It's a privilege to have you here today, particularly to sign this Kensington Treaty, which is a very special treaty because it's the first of its kind ever, if you can believe it, between our two countries. And I see it very much as evidence of the closeness of our relationship as it stands today, the strength of our values, the strength of our joint approach, but also very much as a statement of intent, a statement of our ambition to work ever more closely together, the closest of allies, and whether that's on defence, security, trade, the economy, energy, covers so much in this treaty. And so this is a really historic signing of a historic agreement.
What's he talking about? He did the same thing with the bloke from Czechia. He was like, they signed a memorandum of understanding, right? Which meant that going forward, we'll have a real clear definition of how close we are and what we can do together. It's all cobblers, isn't it?
It's not going to be inked to the pages of history.
No, he's obsessed. It's like he's obsessed with signing treaties.
No, exactly.
I mean, it's one thing to sign a treaty to end the Second World War.
Exactly.
You know, that's a treaty, right? That's worth signing. You know, it's quite a good idea to sign a treaty of, you know, non-nuclear proliferation or something like that. But to sign a treaty just to say this emphasises how close we are, it's just.
We get along,
I'm going to say it again, I'm sorry, I'm 6:13, please stand by, but it's bollocks. It's just rubbish. I'm not having it.
And poor old Friedrich Merz there, he's just sort of having to nod along whilst...
and also, doesn't he looks like a midget standing
He does,
there.
He probably stood in a box as well, just to try and...
I mean, Merz
some of the
is not that tall, really. I mean, it's just embarrassing.
But also, it's like he's kind of giving a sales pitch that he doesn't really even understand doesn't even believe in himself. But this is Keir Starmer. He loves these moments, doesn't he? Because it allows him to pretend that he's a real politician of any substance who can stand in front of a flag and a podium and there with a.
But it's like he's doing it for his kids, you know. And then he rings his kids up. She's showing me on television. You know, I've done another treaty this time with Germany. You know, and I brought. Do you remember? I mean, maybe you didn't do this, but when I was a kid, we used to travel through Europe in the car, and my mother would drive us through like Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and you'd pick up these patches that you'd stick on you know, you'd sew onto your jacket. you know, Salzburg and, you know, Vienna and blah, blah, blah. It's a bit like that. He's kind of going, you know, I've got a treaty with Germany now. I did one with Czechia the other day, and everyone's going, where's Czechia? You know, oh, do you mean the Czech Republic? Oh, it's called Czechia now. And you're going, what's he doing? What is he, you know, and he's not actually achieving anything.
No.
All he's doing is like, these are my friends from foreign countries.
Exactly. Look how much we get along.
And they all stand there looking just baffled.
No, exactly.
Right?
It's like they've all been asked by his mum to indulge him or something. It's that kind of vibe.
And here's your badge, you know, and you know you can stick this on your mantelpiece, or here's another picture for the, you know, for the toilet. It's just really weird.
It does actually make me think of it's like a sort of child who's convinced himself he's prime minister, and everyone has to kind of play along for his amusement. You know, that's
it's true. It's really embarrassing, isn't it? Let's have a look at what he said about 16 and 17-year-old voters yesterday.
I think it's really important that 16 and 17-year-olds have the vote, because they're old enough to go out to work, they're old enough to pay taxes, so to pay in. And I think if you pay in, you should have the opportunity to say what you want your money spent on, which way the government should go. So I'm really pleased that we're able to bring more young people into our democracy and give them the chance to have a say over how their taxes are going to be paid and what they're going to be used for.
Didn't Rishi Sunak do a thing where you had to stay in school till you were 18? So you're not. Well, how are they paying? Maths, how are they paying into the system?
Well, that's the other
16.
thing. Exactly.
Who's paying tax at 16?
School leaving age has been 18 since what, Gordon Brown's days?
Yeah.
You know, and so this.
I don't think you can. I mean, in my day, you could leave school at 15. I don't think you can anymore.
No, exactly. You've got to be still in some form of kind of further education, whether it's sixth form or college or whatever. But it's just another. It's a reminder, isn't it, that this policy is bunk. It's nonsense.
It's rubbish.
You cut the idea
Ball
that
cobblers.
If the idea that 16-year-olds are adults in all other ways, if that were the case, they would be able to serve in active combat in the army. They would be able to get married, buy a packet of cigarettes. Let's at least be consistent. Let's say, okay, we're going to give 16-year-olds vote, fair enough, but they've got to be conscripted. They can smoke as much as they like, and they can, you know, for all intents and purposes, be adults now. The fact that it's inconsistent is proof that it's just generational gerrymandering. It's just, we think they're more likely to vote for us, therefore let's give them the vote.
And they've even got that wrong, because in fact most 16-year-olds, as far as I understand it, more likely to vote Reform, because actually they're rather fond of Nigel Farage.
It would be hilarious, wouldn't it, if this votes for 16 was the cherry on the top of the Reform landslide.
Well, I mean, you say that, but Nigel Farage is pretty confident. I've spoken to him about this before, because a lot of young people come up to him wherever he is and tell him that they can't wait to vote. Have a look at this.
No, I don't. Even though we get lots of votes. I don't, because I don't think you should be able to vote in an election unless you're also eligible to be a candidate. And I don't think 16-year-olds should stand for Parliament. So no, I'm not in favour of it, but I'm really encouraged by the number of young people that are coming towards us.
Yeah, and there are an awful lot of young people coming towards the Reform Party. Shawnee Gloucester says, something needs to happen soon before Labour will finish us off. Keith Starmer and his cronies' destruction of this country is not only because he's incompetent and an ideologue, but it is deliberate. How else can they get things wrong 100% of the time? Even a blind monkey could pick a correct answer occasionally. They will completely destroy our country. We need to get them out ASAP, or we are finished as a nation. It is truly a desperate situation. We need an election now. Well, this is what I was saying yesterday. I read this piece in The Sun saying, you know, people are so fed up, because they have been. When they learned about this Afghanistan scandal, it wasn't just the fact that so many Afghan people are coming to live here, it was the fact that it was done surreptitiously, the fact that these people were flown in literally under cover of darkness in unmarked planes into sort of, you know, military bases, put up in MOD housing, but also then distributed around the country. And according to a piece in the Telegraph today, there's going to be even more of them coming, right? The ECHR opens the door to thousands more Afghans, it says. Up to 100,000 people could make claims against the government, arguing that their rights under the European Convention on Human Rights have been breached because they are in danger of reprisals from the Taliban. And I actually was speaking to people yesterday who live in all different parts of the country. They were all sending me, you know, notes about what it's like where they live, and they've been speaking to people as well who were genuine Afghans who had helped the British forces, who said, like, about 90% of the people that have been brought here, of the 18,000, are just chancers. They're just people who thought they'd chance their arm and go, yeah, we used to work with the British government, let's see if we can get into Britain. And they've all been allowed in.
But that's the thing, even when you have a kind of managed, legislated for asylum routes, there's always the potential that people are going to abuse it en masse.
Absolutely.
And also, if you're trying to run one of these things, doing it in a panic because you've accidentally leaked all of this people information, it would be impossible to go through the level of kind of vetting and security checks that would be necessary to weed out precisely the people that you're talking about, who maybe never served at all, who are just benefiting from the fact that things are very chaotic in Afghanistan. Who are they going to check with?
Might be of a criminal nature, and who are trying to just game the system.
No, exactly. So, and it's impossible to do a kind of rigorous system like that under the circumstances in which we've read about. And as you say, it's the fact that it was done secretively, the fact that this was kept from us, and the idea that this was purely about protecting the people on that spreadsheet, I refuse to believe that's the case. It's clear now from a lot of the reporting. It obviously wasn't. They were also deeply concerned about the way the public would react. And that's, again, that contempt for ordinary people, the refusal to allow them to even to know about, let alone express a view.
Oh, you can't be trusted with this kind of information because you can't handle it.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, we'll flood the country with people from another land who, one, don't speak English, and who, two, don't share our values. I mean, it's extraordinary.
And obviously now there's a pretty clear circumstantial case that this was a contributor to last summer's unrest as well. There was that report in the Mail, 15 of the 20 hotspots for the riots were places which had quite a large number of people from this scheme. That's not to excuse it, but it is to explain it to a certain extent.
Well,
so that's something that needs to,
Well, I mean, I've been saying this all week, and I said it in the piece I wrote. People have been calling in for ages, telling me, we've started seeing a lot more people wandering the streets. We've started noticing, people sort of hanging around on street corners, groups of young men. And some people said to me they look like they're from Afghanistan, but it's obviously not that easy to determine that. But there is definitely a sense in this country that everywhere you go, there is an influx, or a bigger influx than there's ever been, of foreigners. And people notice it because, when you used to go into your hometown to do your shopping on a Wednesday or a Thursday or whatever it was, you wouldn't see it, but now you do. All the time. And
this is one of those things where we saw it with the small boats, and even with this, where it's clear that in terms of the legitimate claims on this scheme, these are people who did put their lives at risk, who we do owe some sort of debt of gratitude to. But if you want the public to go along with that, first of all, you have to tell them about it. Second of all, you have to give them an actual choice. This should be something that is discussed. And also you have to meet all of the very understandable concerns that would exist precisely about safety, vetting, social cohesion. The contempt with which people are treated in this discussion is obvious. People know it now, and whilst again it's not to try to make any excuses for the kind of ugly unrest that we're increasingly seeing, we might get into what happened in Epping last night.
Yes, we will.
This is not this is not happening in a vacuum, is it? And that's something that we need to bear in mind.
No, we will look at that, because we'll also look at what's in the Sun today. They've got a big spread on the sort of the depth of the migrant problem, because not only have they got pictures of the French handing life jackets to the migrants in boats as they come over, but you've got Epping, you've got Bournemouth, you've got Oxford, you've got East London, North London. In every single part of this country, court cases going on where asylum seekers, illegal migrants, whatever you want to call them, are up on all sorts of charges, from theft to rape to sexual assault to all manner of things. We'll come back to that. We'll bring you that in a moment. Another one here from Andy in Mansfield. Starmer does like an historic deal. Unless it's called the Magna Carta and shining the right to jury, they're easily discarded. This man has got more faces than the town hall clock. As for 16-year-olds getting the vote, they're not even allowed to buy super glue. As you say, he's just an embarrassment. There's a whole list of things that people at 16 can't do, and it's just mad, the idea of letting them to vote. But coming up with Tom Slater, we'll tell you how hundreds of freebie hotel migrants are up in court up and down the land. And, the idea that these people have come here because they're seeking a new life and they just want to, escape war, it seems to be further and further from the truth. What they seem to be wanting to do is to commit a bunch of crimes for which we should be deporting them, but we're not. This is Talk.
Chief Constable Vanessa Jardine is clearly incapable of leading her police service effectively and, moreover, properly. She's not fit for service. She should go.
This is a very divisive, dangerous political ideology. And police officers have got no business taking part in a parade.
The Chief Constable Jardine has lost the plot in terms of the very fundamentals, the basic principles of policing, without fear or favour, with impartiality.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 26 minutes past 6. It's been a pretty miserable week, it has to be said, and lots of you were calling in yesterday and the day before and the day before that after this Afghan problem and after this kind of super injunction was planted upon us, whereby we were supposed to be not able to find out anything that this government was up to. And many of you were saying how depressed you were, how awful it all was. So we're going to try and cheer you up a bit today because it's Friday 1 and we're going to try and bring you a few gaffes from the week. Tom Slater's here as well, but also just to kind of, you know, occasionally you just need to have a laugh, and we've got a great one. This is not technically a gaff from Talk, obviously, but this is one of the greatest videos you'll ever see. This is a tech tycoon by the name of Andy Byron, who runs a company called Asylum, right? He's the CEO of it, and he went to see Coldplay with a bunch of people from The Office, as you do. Unfortunately for him, Chris Martin, hideous, ghastly, really boring, awful man, looked up into what they call the kiss cam in America, and they basically sort of zoomed in on this couple who they thought looked terribly romantic together. Have a look at this.
Oh, look at these two. All right, come on, you're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy.
I think we might have to play that again. Watch it carefully. So Chris Martin is the voice that you can hear on the stage. They shine the light on these people who are up in the gods, I guess, watching it in a box or something like that. And we're having a look.
Oh, look at these two. All right, come on, you're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy.
I think they're having an affair, would be my guess, because it turns out that this guy, Andy Byron, is the boss, but the woman who's got his arms around is the boss of HR for his company, right? We haven't got a name for... Oh, no, so we have got a name for her, Kristen Cabot. This is all happening in Boston, Massachusetts, and... I've never seen anything like it. I mean, because people have said, well, surely if something like that happens, do you not just brazen it out? You say, I'm just standing with my arms around somebody, doesn't mean we're, having an affair. But apparently his wife, having seen that, has now taken her name or taken his name off her name on her Instagram account. I mean, so he's not going to have a good weekend.
He's not going to have a good weekend. I mean, it would be embarrassing enough if it wasn't for the fact that he had to hit the deck in front of all those tens of thousands of people, I'm sure. But the fact that now goes viral. Also, now in the newspapers.
I mean,
what an awful
you and I, I'm sure, have never been in that
circumstances.
situation. But what would convince you to just pretend that hadn't happened, and just hit the floor and just go, that'll be a good way to get away with it?
Just sit on the floor. Just get out of frame.
Just get out of the frame.
It'll go away.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Apparently, hundreds of people have accused him of cheating on his wife and have shared support for her. So it's become a sort of a viral thing. Hilarious. I mean, absolutely hilarious. The Sun has approached the astronomer people for comment, but I suspect they won't be saying very much.
It's the fact she's the HR manager as well makes that absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Like she should be,
Do you think
if anything, dissuading him from this this kind of interpersonal relationship.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, presumably she'll have to organise a meeting for herself to be grilled by the HR manager. Oh no, that's her. To ask what on earth you were thinking you were doing. You know, out on a works night out, for heaven's sake. One of the things that's happened this week is that Keir Starmer has tried to convince us all that he's a very hard man, and by that he means I'm not going to brook any kind of opposition. We mentioned Diane Abbott being kicked out of the party. He's kicked out quite a few MPs. Here's Jess Phillips, who's been very quiet for a long time, suddenly started appearing on TV again. Here's what she's got to say about booting out other Labour MPs.
Look, I think that all Labour MPs are there to work for their constituents, and there is a way to do it. Obviously, these are decisions for the Chief Whip, and I'm not across the detail of how many times these people have been spoken to or the disciplinary procedures at all, and for that I am grateful.
What's she talking about? I mean, that's another one of those kind of word salad conversations. What does she even mean by that?
I know exactly. It's just obviously dodging the question as well, which seems to be her forte. Right. These days, there was that clip doing the rounds from yesterday of her...
About the rape gangs?
Yeah, just refusing to answer the question about, you know, is migrant crime a problem? Yeah. And then just, well... Men are a problem. It's embarrassing, but you know, the fact that she's clinging on is incredible.
Yeah, it's all men. You know, it's like we're all members of rape gangs. Actually, no. There are a lot of Pakistani men who are members of rape gangs. You know, unfortunately, most of us are not. Looking at that story about crime and punishment and migrants, The Sun has done a great spread on it. Here it is. The Sun investigates the rap sheet of UK asylum seekers, and I think we might have. Do we have any footage of Epping in Essex? We'll get it in a minute, but basically there's been a huge kind of flashpoint in Epping Forest. An asylum seeker who has been accused of trying to kiss a girl in the town centre 8 days after arriving on a small boat. This is a court case which is going on, so we can't really get into it as it's live. But an awful lot of people have sort of found themselves at the hotel where he's being put up, which is another one of these migrant hotels, and there's been sort of Antifa have been turning up, and it's become a real flashpoint, isn't it?
No, absolutely, and it was obviously sparked by that shocking allegations, as you say, string of sexual offences allegedly committed just days after arriving on a small boat. It's worth saying that he was remanded in custody, so he wouldn't have been at that migrant hotel. And to be honest, I think this thing of protests outside of migration hotels, it seems like a recipe for disaster whenever it's even attempted. Even when it begins peacefully, it becomes something that's going to be hijacked by people who want to...
the police turn up.
Yeah, and then you know, young men either just looking for a fight or because they want to, you know, actually cause some trouble will show up. Antifa will show up. That adds all of these things to it, and then you end up with the very ugly scenes we saw last night of not only people trying to smash up police vans, but one person was hit by a police van at one point. So it's an absolute mess, and I think, you know, those protests are not necessarily helping matters. At the same time, we all understand what sparked this. There are clearly legitimate concerns amongst the people who didn't show up there for a fight, but just showed up there to make their voices heard. And this is a pattern that we keep seeing repeat itself across the country. We saw it in Knowsley a couple of years ago. We've seen it in Ireland a few times recently. We've seen it now in Epping, and unless we want that pattern to keep repeating itself, then something needs to change.
And also, you know, I'm very much in favour of those who say, actually, the reason that this is happening is not because there's a lot of people who are racist in a particular community, or people who are looking for a fight or looking for trouble. The whole reason that it's happening is because all of these young men are being put into hotels in places where they never used to be there. You know, and we certainly know from a memorandum that went round in September, I think, of last year, to ministers, that an awful lot of the places where riots happened during the summer were places where an awful lot of Afghan refugees have been placed deliberately by the government. So, you know, you can't really blame the locals for getting worked up, but you can blame the government for dispersing people into an area and expecting nobody to notice.
This policy of basically making, I mean, it's less true in Epping Forest, but certainly across other parts of the country, some of the most deprived communities bear the brunt. First of all, the small boats crisis, but now also this secretive Afghan scheme. It was always seen
pictures, by the way. Now this is from Epping Forest.
This is from last night, absolutely. And it's a recipe for disaster. Like, as I say, I don't think protests outside of migrant hotels are the way forward. I certainly think that those who do show up just to have a ruck and to hijack these things should be condemned. But at the same time, if you're having places which already have quite bleak economic prospects, and again, I'm not talking about Epping here per se, but certainly a lot of the places where we saw the riots last summer, and there's not much local resources to go around, to then kind of hand over the local leisure centre or the hotel or whatever to this and to housing people who are often, in many cases, just illegal migrants. And the thing about illegal migrants is there's a non-negligible portion of them who will continue to commit crimes having entered illegally. That it's not rocket science to work that one out. So it's just we've got to break this pattern.
As we look in through the Sun, they've got, like I say, they've got a big spread on pages 8 and 9. The rap sheet of UK asylum seekers: lock them up and throw away the room key, is what it says. Bournemouth, in addition to Epping, which you're seeing there, Bournemouth, a Libyan asylum seeker living at a Home Office hotel, yesterday admitted using a knife to threaten a member of staff. Ibrahim Zouari, 34 years of age, drew the weapon during a disturbance in Bournemouth in April last year. He admitted to a Crown Court. He admitted unlawfully and intentionally threatening the victim with a bladed article, but through an interpreter, he pleaded not guilty to assault by beating against the victim. So again, you know, here's another expense that we've got. We've got an interpreter for him, which you wouldn't get in any other country. Oxford, a hotel migrant lashed out at his partner after a Christmas Eve argument turned into a physical altercation. This is another court case. Mohammed Moneem allegedly attacked her in a taxpayer-funded hotel in Oxford last year. Then go to East London. Another hotel migrant admitted theft and fraud offences in 4 different towns and cities, snatching bags in Bishop Stortford in London. He lives at a migrant hotel in East London. He's also used stolen bank cards in Canterbury, and, you know, the list goes on and on. One in North London, an Asylum hotel resident claimed he stole food from a co-op store because he was going hungry on his taxpayer-funded allowance. You know, the list goes on and on and on. And, you know, this is doing irreparable damage, I say, to sort of cohesion in the community of Great Britain.
No, absolutely. And it's something which could so easily have been prevented. I mean, we've, especially via the kind of small boats crisis, but other means as well. We've just allowed for a route of illegal migration, in effect. And people talk about it euphemistically as if this is asylum, but we all know people are just trying to take advantage of that in order to just get into the country. And the thing is, if you allow for illegal migration, you're basically selecting for a higher proportion of criminals by doing that. Not everyone who enters the country illegally will go on to commit serious violent or otherwise crimes, but I'd wager it's pretty clear a higher proportion than otherwise, because of the fact that they're already entering illegally. Oftentimes they're not fleeing persecution in another country, they're fleeing charges in another country. And yet we've ignored this time and time again, just refused to.
Because the likes of Jess Phillips and others in the Labour Party will say, oh, but, you know, they're coming from a foreign land, they must be good people. You know, this ridiculous notion that everybody must be good who's coming here as an illegal migrant. Absolutely shocking. Coming up, we'll play a video from the French beaches from yesterday. Also, we'll talk a little bit more about more woes from Jaguar, and we'll talk a bit about junior doctors as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:39. I'm Mike Graham. 16-year-olds of the left will vote for Corbyn, with the rest voting for reform. No way will they vote for Starmer if they vote at all, says Tony in Barrow-in-Furness. Starmer hardly inspires them to vote. He doesn't inspire anybody to do anything, really. I think now that we know more about him and now that we've seen what Starmer is actually like, I don't think anybody would vote for him ever again. And I still don't believe, and I've said this, of course, for a very long time, I still don't believe that he will lead the Labour Party into the next election anyway, whenever it is. Just before we do anything else, let's talk about James Whale, because broadcasting titan, talk presenter, the man that we all know and love, has given what he says is his final interview. He's in a terminal battle with cancer, we know that. We did a tribute to his life 3 years ago, and at that point he wasn't expecting to live much beyond Christmas. Thank God he actually has managed to do that. He's been hanging on for years, more than he was supposed to be fair. But his most compelling interview to date, and he's sat down in a very emotional conversation with Reform UK leader and his longtime friend Nigel Farage at his home in Kent, and looked back on his legendary broadcasting career in the world of politics. Here's a little clip.
Thanks, Nigel.
James, you're a complete star.
I hope I've got more than a few weeks, but...
Well, so do I.
That's really made me...
So do
good.
I. And you never know, miracles do happen.
They do. They do.
They do happen. Well, your career's been a miracle.
Yeah. Well, it has, considering I had no A-levels, O-levels, CSEs, or even a letter after my name for broadcasting.
You said to me the other day, you've never really had a job.
I haven't.
It's an amazing interview, and you can watch the whole thing on YouTube. It's available from 10 a.m. this morning, or you can hear the interview broadcast this very evening on Talk at 10 p.m. We'll be playing a few clips of that throughout the course of the day. We've been talking, Tom, about the migrant situation. Here's another one for you. This is a clip from Max Stevens at the Telegraph reporting in from a beach in Normandy.
Straight out to the shoreline, they're waving towards the dinghy which is coming in to, we suspect, to pick them up. It looks like the smugglers are directing who's allowed to go out into the boat first. We're on the beach of Graveland. It's very early morning, approximately 6 a.m. Behind me, as you can see, there's a group of migrants. They are currently camping out on the shoreline. A few scuffles breaking out. We believe that the police had fired tear gas over in the scrubland where they'd possibly camped the night before. They then sprinted all along. You can see most of them are sort of young men, 20 years old. They're now sprinting out towards the water. About half of them are wearing life jackets. This is the second crossing that we've seen on this morning. Earlier, further down on the shoreline, we saw approximately 70 migrants aboard the smugglers' boat. We saw many of the smugglers sort of jumping out of the boat before a gendarme vessel intercepted.
And that just shows you how well organised it is. You know, it's a business, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
we got the French police in the Telegraph today, Marc Musiol, a French border police officer in Pas-de-Calais, saying, we are helpless, there is nothing we can do. And then we go back to that sentence, donner de la tête. We have no idea how to stop this because it's going on such a regular basis. And there's a picture there of the French authorities handing life jackets to these guys. And all of those people that you've seen in that video are probably now here.
No, absolutely. And it's the fact that this has gone on for so long. I do think, or I hope, that we'll look back on this and think, how was this allowed? The fact that it's so open that you can be, you know, a journalist from the Telegraph and just show up and film it at ease. The fact that we've continued down this fantasy road, which is that we can pay, if we pay the French enough money, they'll sort this out. It's not within their interest to sort this out. They're
very happy to see them go.
That's always been the issue. This is something that we've got to take responsibility for sorting out ourselves, because you can't expect anyone else to sort it out for you. I think it's one of those things where obviously now we're talking about it, but the fact that it's taken so many years and so many thousands of people making that quite perilous crossing, let's not forget. I think we'll hopefully in 10 years' time be scratching our heads as to why this was ever allowed to become so normal.
I know, and it is completely normalised. And, you know, there's other bodies of water where, in some ways, it's been worse. You know, when you think about the Mediterranean and you think about people coming from North Africa to Lollapalooza, or whatever it's called, that
Lampedusa,
island, Lampedusa, off the coast of Sicily. And then you've got the Greeks who have come out last week and said, you know, we are going to clamp down on this. Anybody coming here from North Africa is immediately going to be arrested and put in a detention centre in Crete. You know, you will never stay here. We will be taking you back to where you came from. You know, they seem to have managed to get a grip of it. And in fact, the body of water they're dealing with is a lot bigger than the one we're dealing with. But we can't seem to deal with it.
No, absolutely. And there's no even sense of, this is about destroying the incentives. This is about destroying the business model. Keir Starmer says he wants to smash the gangs. How are you going to do that if there is still a pretty good chance that as soon as you set one foot in British territory, it's very unlikely that you'll ever be deported?
Yeah.
So, again, he just likes to kind of mess around with an international agreement here. We've struck this returns agreement with this country. We've done this, we've done that. Some of that will be useful work, absolutely. But we all know where the real problem lies. It's in the human rights setup. It's in our legal... The legal kind of thicket that's been created around this issue. You've got to sort that out.
Selling to these migrants from God knows where, Eritrea, Sudan, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, if you were selling, you know, moving to Britain to them, you would say, look, as soon as you set foot in Britain, you'll be looked after. You know, you won't be kicked out. You'll be able to apply for asylum. People will meet you on the beach from Care for Calais or whatever it is, some charity. They'll give you a phone, they'll give you a blanket, they'll give you food, you'll be put on a bus, you'll be taken to a hotel, and you will have the life of Riley compared to where you've been in northern France. Who's not going to do it?
No, exactly. And also, this is one thing that came up with negotiations in France, the fact that it's quite easy to get a job in the British black market, it turns out. So, again, it's...
totally.
All of these things have just been completely ignored and unaddressed, haven't they, for so long. And it's obviously, it's not just this government. The last Tory government had their fingerprints all over this stuff, but we've ended up with a Prime Minister who is uniquely ill-equipped to tackle this because of his own ideology, because of his own human rights background.
Yes.
It was always going to be a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from John.
Morning, Mike. John from West Yorkshire here. With regard to all these fighting-age young men that are coming across on boats, I don't understand if we can't send them back at the moment due to ECHR, but until we get a decent government in to get rid of that, why, as everyone says, they're fighting-age young men, why don't we immediately, on the shores of Dover and wherever, why don't we immediately conscript them, sign them up, have army officers there just to take all the details. That'll do a few things. One, in their training, they'll actually be taught British values. Two, it gives some young men for our depleted forces.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you make, John. Thank you very much indeed. It is ridiculous, totally and utterly mad. Coming up, we're going to speak to Peter Blexley about not just what's going on in the Channel, but also what's going on in Epping Forest and how that might suddenly become a big deal over the weekend. Plus, we've got Notting Hill Carnival story as well. They're going to use facial recognition in an attempt to try and stop people from committing crimes that they may have already committed before. We shall see if that's going to work. 6:47.
you will see there is just a different attitude to children and families.
Sure.
Children are loved. They are absolutely loved. I mean, whenever we travel back to South Africa to visit family, I'm always amazed at how much attention my children get. People really, 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 really love kids in those societies.
And over here we hate kids. Is that roughly where we're at?
Do you know what?
Is there a nuisance?
I don't know. I don't think we're quite at that level yet. So people tell me in South Korea, which has the lowest fertility rate in the world,
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 10 minutes to 7. Tom Slater's here with us. Morning, Mike. I told my lad last night, says Steve from Middlesbrough, that due to the rising bills because of the incompetence of the Labour government, his phone can only be charged once a week, and his computer game use is to be severely reduced, which isn't a lie. Seriously, though, if kids see the way their parents are struggling under these loons, the youth vote may backfire. Obviously, the feckless will vote Labour. That's why they give free stuff out. Yeah, the feckless will vote Labour. It's a bunch of champagne socialists who don't need any money, who are rich enough to be able to qualify for socialism, and also a bunch of people who are on benefits. That's what it is. Peter Blacksley's here, though, former Metropolitan Police detective. Things are rising in Epping Forest. There's an awful lot of tension there, and it could well overspill at the weekend. Let's find out what the latest is. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
So, I mean, we've just read out a litany of stories from The Sun this morning, Peter, about how so many of these asylum seekers up and down the country are ending up in court for all sorts of miscreant behaviour. Some of it involves, you know, burglary, some of it involves theft, some of it involves sexual attacks, some of it involves just general law breaking. But here in Epping Forest, the locals seem to be getting very wound up and worked up about a particular story there, which obviously is the subject of a court case, so we can't get into it too much. But what are you seeing?
Imagine working hard, buying your own home or renting a home and making it yours and making it lovely, raising a family, including teenage daughters, and living in a nice kind of area of Essex and enjoying the fruits of your hard work, only for a local hotel to be taken over and filled to the brim with men who have recently arrived in the UK from places that we can only hazard a guess at, who we don't know who they are, who we don't know their backgrounds, and whom we don't know their intentions. And they are parachuted into your local neighbourhood. Then imagine if one of those men is alleged to have committed criminal offences against a teenage girl and is then charged and brought before a court. That is the situation for many of the residents of Epping in Essex. It is therefore no surprise to me that many people have taken to the streets to express their disquiet about what is going on. I completely understand that. What I don't understand and can't support is, of course, attacks on police officers.
Yeah.
And they are very, very regrettable, and I wish they would stop. But be aware, the disquiet runs the length and breadth of the country. Epping may just be a very small example of what could happen elsewhere.
Right. And it becomes a flashpoint, which means that, you know, you get the kind of Antifa brigade turning up. You also get, I guess, troublemakers turning up as well, because the local protesters are not interested in fighting the police, but it suddenly becomes a flashpoint, and it becomes a problem for the police, doesn't it? Because they don't really know how to police it, if you know what I mean.
It certainly does. They are often the meat in the sandwich, shall we say, between two very much differing sides of the argument. And they, of course, have to take the brickbats often, and there is unpleasantness towards them. which is idiotic and deeply, deeply regrettable. But if people have their neighbourhoods blighted by hundreds of men being parachuted into local hotels, and those men then prowl the streets of those local neighbourhoods, committing crime, some of them, because they come from cultures that are completely alien to ours, people are going to get very, very upset. And this is replicated, once again, as I say, the length and breadth of the country.
Yeah. It really is. We're going to keep an eye on it, of course, over the weekend. Peter, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this early in the morning. Really appreciate you getting up and doing that for us. It's coming up to 5 minutes to 7. Tom Slater's here with me. Just to reiterate the problems that we've got up and down the country, we've also got the other side of it, which is the Home Office, and the front page, not the front page, page 12 of the Mail. Top Home Office civil servant received a £455,000 pay package, including a £20,000 bonus as small boat arrival soared. It was revealed yesterday. On top of his $200,000 annual salary, Sir Matthew Rycroft received a $50,000 exit payment, of which $30,000 was tax-free when he stepped down as permanent secretary at the end of March. The Home Office's annual accounts, which set out sums in £5,000 brackets, showed that he received a performance-related bonus of $25,000. You know, it goes on and on and on. Nearly 500,000 quid for running the Home Office, which is not fit for purpose.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's like they're kind of laughing in our faces.
Yeah.
And
they are. And again, people will be absolutely peed off by this.
No, exactly. And this issue is going to sink not just this government, I think, but also just faith in the British state more broadly, faith in the idea that people who are running the civil service or are running some of the big ministries actually care what ordinary people think, actually even live in the same world as them, because they don't seem to be nearly as affected by it or perturbed by it. The fundamental kind of crisis of trust that now exists, I didn't think it could get any worse, but in the past week or so you really feel those views hardening now.
It really does.
To a lot of stuff
and
like this.
I'm afraid, I'm sorry to do this to you guys listening out there in the big wide world, but final story to talk about, I suppose. Britain forced to pay the EU under Labour's Brexit reset. For first front page of the Daily Telegraph, apparently new EU documents are going to demand financial contributions to the bodies that manage food standards and the carbon market rules that Britain will have to follow. This again is another Starmer blunder as far as I'm concerned. You know, he had the EU here, started doing all that coalition, the willing and all that cobblers, right? And it's now turned out that we are now effectively twinning ourselves, if you like, with the European Union.
No, absolutely, because he just gave in on absolutely everything, because he's convinced that the European Union is the answer to all our problems, despite all of the problems that it has.
Yeah, right.
And this was always going to happen. I mean, we knew that deal was bad. We knew it was a capitulation. We knew it was a surrender. But it was always, in the detail, I think it was going to be obvious that there was going to be more financial contributions, precisely the things that used to anger people so much. So we can only hope that it generates a significant kind of pushback, and people realise what's been done here, because the nature of these deals is often that they're a little bit behind closed doors, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the documents say, and this is a quote, the United Kingdom should contribute financially to supporting the relevant costs associated with the Union's work in these policy areas. You know, we didn't ask him to go and realign himself with Europe. We didn't ask him to go and realign himself on food safety or on carbon capture or any of that. You know, how has he got the mandate to even do it? You know, in what world can you have a referendum which says we leave the European Union, and then some years later some ridiculous Prime Minister comes back and goes, well, you know, maybe we'll just, you know, go and sign a few documents and take us closer in. How can he do that?
Yeah, he hasn't got a mandate for it at all. It wasn't in his manifesto. No. He talked about, you know, striking a new relationship with Europe, but that sounded pretty inoffensive to most people. He's doing this underhandedly. He wants to... I think the plan was very much to you salami slice Brexit. What piece by piece, sector by sector, you put us back under the yoke of the European Union, and that's what we've started doing. And the problem is, as soon as you start and you say we're going to align with the EU on this set of rules, food regulations, for example, which is already capitulated on, suddenly every industry body, suddenly every, you know, Remainer who hasn't got over it says, what about this sector or this area or whatever? And that's, I think,
and they all start to go, well, maybe we should prepare for what might be coming down the pike and all of that.
Absolutely.
It's shocking. One final story. We've only got about a minute here. Heat pump handouts. We sort of knew this anyway, but it's been another bad week for Ed Miliband Taliban. He's now saying that he's going to offer homeowners heat pumps with a £200 discount off them. The trouble is, it's going to take 25 years to pay off the upfront cost of putting them in.
Just absolutely incredible.
25 years.
With heat pumps, electric cars, if they were such a good idea, you wouldn't need to spend so much public money and try and force people to use them. Like, you can't push water uphill, but that seems to be what they're desperate to do on all of these issues, you know.
That is the greatest description of what net zero is all about. Pushing water uphill. I love it. Brilliant. Tom Slater, thank you very much indeed. We've got loads more to do. Coming up, Benedict Spence is going to talk to us. We're going to talk to Claire Coutinho, the Shadow Energy Secretary. We'll get from her what is going on. Liam in Warrington on the subject of 16-year-olds voting. If we're giving 16-year-olds the vote, I don't want their name withheld from the public for legal reasons when they commit a crime. Well, that's a very good point as well. And also, somebody raised this point yesterday. Should they not have all their child benefit taken away as well, if they're actually old enough to vote? 0344 499 1000. Send us a voice note, call us, text us, get in touch. This is Morning Glory.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us carry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 7. The sun is up, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday, the 18th of July, and it is a massive, massive day for news, of course. It's been a massive week for news. We've learned all about the terrible crisis of confidence in this government. Keir Starmer, despite the fact that it wasn't his fault that this migrant crisis happened with Afghanistan and the cover-up that happened under the Labour government, you know, Grant Shapps went and applied for a super injunction back in 2023. But a lot of people have said to me, why are you having such a go at the Labour government when this was a Tory crisis caused by the Tories, you know, invented by the Tories, screwed up by the Tories? Yes, indeed it was. And the Tories have got an awful lot to answer for. And I would still like to see Grant Shapps prostrate on the floor in front of me so that I could ask him a few questions as to why he thought it was a great idea to hide the facts from the public so that they could never find out about the mistakes that had been made by that Tory government and the civil service when they managed to send out a list of 18,500 names which were supposed to be protected from the Taliban. You know the story. We've been talking about it all week. I wrote about it in The Sun yesterday, and there's plenty more to come. It looks like now, according to Piece of the Telegraph, the ECHR will open the door to thousands more Afghan families coming to this country to live here for free. And many of them have got dependents, of course, some 5, some have got 10, some have got 15. You know, that's why the number is going to be so high that we could end up with 150,000 people coming to live in this country from Afghanistan. So far, we've already placed 18,500 of them up and down the country, and I'm going to be reading you some of the things that people have been saying to me over the course of the last couple of days. Also, we found out this morning that we are now living in a land where so many migrants are here that they're clogging up the judicial system because basically they are committing crimes hand over fist, from sexual assault to robbery to theft to nuisance to all sorts of domestic violence. It just is an incredible recipe for disaster. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're going to be talking to Benedict Spence coming up very shortly. Keir Starmer, meanwhile, has done all kinds of more treaties with people from Czechia to Germany. Yesterday he had Chancellor Merz in Downing Street. Nobody knows entirely why he's doing it. We've got lots of other stories to talk about as well. Of course, the Notting Hill Carnival is going to go ahead. They're going to have facial recognition cameras there, according to the front page of the Daily Mail, and £1 million has been given of taxpayers' money to make sure they keep going. Wes Street has offered an olive branch to junior doctors. Half of parents want summer holidays slashed because they go on for way too long. And, of course, the most amazing piece of video of the week, I would say, and possibly for quite a long time, is the tech tycoon exposed as a love cheat at a Coldplay show. Incredible footage. We'll play that as well. But loads and loads of stories about the migrants. The French police admitting they cannot stop them. Let me give you the little French phrase, which I want you all to remember. Donner de la tête. Which means we are helpless. We cannot do anything about it. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And since it's Friday, of course, we're going to try and cheer you up, because it's been a pretty miserable week, so we want to try and cheer everybody up with as many gaffes as we can put into the show between now and 10 o'clock in the morning. Here's one from Julia Hartley-Brewer.
Let's go to calls. Steve is on the line. He's in Somerset. Hello, Steve. What do you want to say?
Oh, hello there. Just finishing off my fish finger sandwich.
Fish. Seriously, if you've got a video camera, we'll just have you eating the fish finger sandwich.
The last bit of evidence is just gone.
I love that. Are you ready now? You got the ketchup? Are you ketchup or mayo or neither?
Nothing. I'm a naked fish finger eater.
You're puritanical about it, right? Good to know.
I have got clothes on.
We do. Well, unlike Greg Wallace, but there we are. Right. Should we get to the subject in hand, Steve? Right.
Fish Finger Erotica by Julie Hartley-Brewer. Who knew that's what she was into? Let's get a voice note from Tom.
Morning, Mike. Tom here. Great show as always. Yeah, I mean, like so many other people, I've got sort of first-hand accounts of the impact that migrants moving into our local areas have. I live in a very small hamlet, about 20 minutes away from Eastbourne, population of less than 400, and there is a hotel, or there was a hotel, 4-star hotel nearby, which was taken over, and within days of the migrants moving in, we saw a massive uptick in crime. The nearby town, I won't say the name, saw a massive uptick in theft, assaults, sexual assaults, break-ins, you name it. I was part of a local Facebook group, and it blew up overnight with people reporting, I've had this stolen, someone was following my daughter, this, that, the other. And the impact is huge, and you know it's clear for everyone to see, and I can't see it getting better anytime soon. Cheers again, Mike. Great show.
Yeah, Tom, thanks very much indeed. Tom, they're just a very ordinary member of the public, you know, living his life, trying to deal with what goes on around him, not in any way any kind of mad extremist, just saying, look, you know, we can see what's going on. We look around and we see what is happening. Let's talk to Benedict Spence, because the migrant problem, I think, is the overarching story of the week, really. Benedict, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Very disturbed, I think, this week is the country, because many people got in touch with me over the last 48 hours or so with their own stories. Many of them just sending me messages on Facebook, on Twitter, telling us that, you know, where I live, this is what's happening. And it's quite an extraordinary picture that is now appearing to be the case, where everyone has seemingly been touched by a migrant problem, you know, whether it's a local hotel that's been taken over, whether it happens to be the streets where they live which have been taken over, whether they've just noticed a lot more kind of, you know, dodgy looking people wandering around. You know, the numbers, the sheer numbers, and now that we know about the Afghanistan situation, have just kind of dwarfed everything else this week.
They have, and I think in particular when it comes to the Afghanistan thing, the secrecy around it, the scale of it and the secrecy around it, I think has angered an awful lot of people, precisely because, of course, we're still going through the scandal of the grooming gangs across much of the north of England and the Midlands, and suggestions that it's even further afield, much of which, of course, the major central allegation is not only did it happen, but that authorities knew that it happened and kept very quiet about it, if not actually tried to hush it up. So to then find that, and that was being done at a local level, to then find that, you know, central government had been involved in a massive operation to move people and had also kept that quiet, but had dropped these people into communities without their say-so, without their knowledge, and having admitted after the fact, forcibly, that they also didn't necessarily know who all of these people were. Oh, and by the way, it could be 24,000, but it could also conceivably be 150,000 because they're all allowed to bring their relatives with them. I think that really does focus minds, I think. When you sort of think about it in the abstract and you think, oh, there's 40,000 coming across the channel a year, and you can see them coming on the boats, that's bad enough. But when it's covert flights are bringing people in their thousands and you don't know where they've gone. Oh, and by the way, the government has just been forced to admit this. Oh, and by the way, you can see people on your streets in your towns that weren't there a few weeks ago. And there is, as you say, the uptick in crime, the antisocial behaviour. And then, of course, you have it factored in that your personal services are going down. Your council is perhaps running fewer hours a week. There are fewer services, but your taxes are going up. It all reaches a critical point where people start to go, so local services, local authorities are keeping things secret from us. National government is keeping things secret from us. What else are they keeping secret from us? And how much more of this do we have to put up with? Because if we don't say no, they will keep pushing this on us.
That's very much the theme, isn't it? And meanwhile, we've got a government which seems to be, to all intents and purposes, sort of tone deaf to what the ordinary people of this country are thinking. You know, we know from what happened last summer that Keir Starmer believes that anyone who doesn't like a migrant is somehow a far-right thug who's sort of on the brink of setting fire to a wheelie bin and chucking it into a hotel. You know, he clearly has no understanding, as many MPs don't have, of the mood of the nation. It's almost as though he's deliberately ignoring it.
I mean, they will still cling to this ideology of theirs at all cost, that fundamentally all of these people are good and all of the problems are caused by the far right. I mean, Jess Phillips went on another radio show earlier this week, and she was being asked by the host, I forget his name, about levels of crime in certain demographics. And we all know that it happens. We all know that certain demographics are massively disproportionately affected when it comes to crime statistics, be they Somalis, be the Albanians, you know, whereas others, like the Ghanaians, for instance, barely register at all on the list. We all know that it happens. And Jess Phillips could not bring herself to say, and I think she was talking about sexual assault, she could not bring herself to say that there were some communities that were overrepresented. So in her desperate bid not to be offensive, she just went, well, there's one thing that links all of these communities everywhere, and that's men. And you just kind of sat there going, so in your bid to not be offensive, you've just slandered half the population. It's really smart, but that's how the ideology works.
Yeah, absolutely right. And funnily enough, it's the first time she's been seen for ages, because she went and took a very, very sort of long powder, did she not, when the whole rape gang conversation was going on. And by the way, since we're on that subject, what the hell is happening to the rape gang inquiry? Because it's all gone a bit quiet, hasn't it?
It has, but I also have to say, even though that, as you say, it's gone a bit quiet, and it's been sort of ongoing for a very long time and not a lot has happened about it, I do sort of feel as if we've just reached a critical mass on that subject. It's not going to go away, because actually people have started to pay attention to the scale. They've started to pay attention to the media outlets that are covering it. And I think that the fury has just reached such a level that you can try and obfuscate. You can try and do the classic British government thing of pretending it's not there and sort of explain it away and bog it down in investigations and inquiries. it's not going anywhere, especially when the numbers of people coming into the country from the parts of the world that are most likely to commit these crimes continues apace. And then the government is found to be not only complicit, but government ministers then go on TV afterwards and go, well, we had a moral duty to bring these people in. And, oh, by the way, no, we can't tell you who they are or where we've put them or how many there are.
Yeah, absolutely right. Meanwhile, I'm going to distract you for a moment, like a sort of, a man entering the old days of the British Empire with some flashy sort of, shiny things to distract you. Here's Keir Starmer yesterday talking about something called the Kensington Treaty.
It's a privilege to have you here today, particularly to sign this Kensington Treaty, which is a very special treaty because it's the first of its kind ever, if you can believe it, between our two countries. Yeah. And I see it very much as evidence of the closeness of our relationship as it stands today, the strength of our values, the strength of our joint approach, but also very much as a statement of intent, a statement of our ambition to work ever more closely together, the closest of allies, and whether that's on defence, security, trade, the economy, energy, covers so much in this treaty. And so this is a really historic signing of a historic agreement.
This statement of intent comes at this time, 7:15. I plan to be on the air until 10 o'clock. That's my statement of intent. This comes hot on the heels of a deal that he did with the Prime Minister of Czechia, as they like to call it, where they signed a memorandum of understanding, which is all about basically setting out on paper how close we are with each other and what we intend to do together in the future. It's complete and utter BS, isn't it?
I mean, I was slightly tickled when he said that this is the first treaty of its kind between our two countries, and then he mentioned defence, and I thought, oh, thank heavens, a non-aggression pact after all these years. Yeah, right. That's just what we could have done with some time ago. Yes. I mean, it is just what you are going to see is this ever sort of creeping move towards greater alignment with European countries on all sorts of things. And,
well, it's going to cost us a few quid, according to the front page of the Daily Telegraph. We're going to have to pay the European Union now, thanks to Keir Starmer's Brexit reset.
Yeah, this is a stealth way of basically, I'm not going to say readmittance to the European Union because it's not. They wouldn't be so foolish as to do that. But it is going to be a significantly worse situation than if we were in the European Union, or if, in fact, if we'd just had quite a hard break with the European Union. We're going to sort of get certain access or certain alignment to certain things. We're going to pay them money, but we're not actually going to be a full paid-up member. And I think that is... This is the thing you have to remember in the world of the Europhile, is that a bad deal with the European Union, where you get to sort of cling to some of it, is better than no deal at all. And that was always the fear, was that we were going to leave, and then we were going to have, frankly, a half-cocked agreement with the EU, where slowly there was going to be greater alignment on certain things, not necessarily to our significant benefit, purely because of the financial cost. I mean, any amount of money that we're spending in order for British citizens to be able to use e-gates is not an amount of money worth spending. It is this strange Remainer middle-class fantasy where they go, oh, I have to add 20 minutes onto my entire trip because I have to queue at the at passport control, whereas everybody else gets to use the electronic gates. And for that, we're supposed to give them how much money to alleviate that problem? I mean, that is complete nonsense. But, alignment on things like defence...
Yeah. It's like the world's most expensive upgrade, isn't it?
It is, but, these are things like spending more money on defence. But what exactly does that mean? Yeah. Given that our own defence policy is, just this sort of gaping chasm of money that we just throw things into and it disappears, I'm not entirely sure what it is that greater alignment with Germany, which has only just recently started its own rearmament, not to worry anybody, but has only just started that, 2 years into the Russian war. What exactly does it mean? We're going to be running sort of joint ops with Germany. Neither of us has the equipment or the troops.
No, exactly right. Final thought for you, Benedict, on votes for 16-year-olds. What do you make of it?
Honestly, why not? Why not at this point? I mean, have you seen the quality of the MPs we already have?
Yeah.
That's what adults have voted for. No, I mean, honestly, we all knew that it was coming. It was inevitable that they were going to try and front-load it onto us because they're worried they might not be able to achieve very much else in government. They think that this is how they're going to be able to rig elections going forward because they think everybody is going to vote left-wing. Actually, what's going to happen is young girls, if they vote at all, are going to vote Green or Lib Dem, and young boys are probably going to vote Reform.
Yeah.
the majority of them aren't going to vote at all because they're not really that interested in this. But what this will lead to is the massive politicisation of schools, because teachers will try to push their views onto their pupils. You mark my words.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right on. Thank you very much indeed. Benedict Spence, political commentator there. Let's get a voice note from Sean on the migrants.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. Now, the Prime Minister said yesterday that 16 and 17-year-olds should be able to vote because if they pay taxes, then they should get a say on where the money goes. Now, I'm not being funny, but I don't recall getting a say when our money is getting sent to terrorists in Syria, or getting sent to terrorists in Palestine, or getting sent to Sri Lanka, or getting spent on all these boat people. I never asked for any of this. Nobody asked me if we can send all this money here. And I think this Labour government should have better things to do, mate. I mean, all the list of priorities, what needs sorting out. The country's almost bankrupt, mate. We have riots in Epping, which are only going to spread elsewhere. I mean, this absolutely useless, this lot, mate. Great show, Mike.
Sean, good to hear from you. Yeah, they are useless, completely and utterly useless. And you're right, you know, just because you have the vote, it doesn't mean that you actually get to tell the government where they should put their money. I mean, technically, yes, if they had a manifesto which was in any way credible, yes, they would say what their spending plans were, but they didn't do that, did they? They're spending money on things that we never asked them to spend it on, like the Chagos Islands, for example, as he said, like on migrant hotels, like on the bleeding Afghan invasion. You know, 7 or 8 billion quid that we're going to spend on that nobody asked us if we wanted to spend it. I'm afraid we do not have as much control over these characters as we should have. But thinking of that, is it not the point now to ask, if you are going to make the argument that you have to pay tax and you have to get your way and you have to be represented in Parliament because you pay tax, well then surely if you don't pay tax, you shouldn't have the vote then, should you? Is that the logic? If you're on benefits, you don't get the vote. If you don't work and you don't pay tax, you don't get the vote. It's not a bad thought. Phil in Coventry says, let's hope polling stations have enough places for 16-year-olds with machetes to lock their electric bike up. Have a nice day. And Lee from Walsall says, there is only one reason I think Starmer is letting all the migrants in. It is he will give them the vote. Crikey. And Betty says this, morning Mike, from glorious Scotland today. I'm heading to lovely Eyemouth, where life is normal and the world continues as it did when we were kids. Still £4 a pint in the contented soul. Lovely. Well, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should try and have a bit of a feel-good Friday and tell us where you're going to seek some solace, to try and like hide away from all the crap that has been flying around this week, to try and find yourself again. Tell us where you're going, and if you're going anywhere good, recommend it, and we might join you. 7:21.
polling that's just come out shows that 2/3 of the country completely disagree with this. But the Labour Party don't care about that. They just want to make sure they stay in power. And what I hope, actually, is that when high school kids in countries like the Netherlands were asked who they would vote for, they all said Geert Wilders and the Populist Party. So I hope our lot coming up have the, sense of mind to listen to their school teachers and think they're overpaid idiots and morons, and actually start unpicking some of the damage and the brainwashing they're subjected to.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:24, with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. It is Friday, it is the 18th of July. We are here, of course, for your delectation. The sun is shining. It's not been a great week for anybody, really. We've been finding out an awful lot of bad things about the way this country has been run by the previous government and also now continually by this current Labour government. Let's talk now to Claire Coutinho, MP, former Energy Secretary, now Shadow Energy Secretary. She was, of course, in a bit of a spat with Ed Miliband this week in Parliament. Very good morning to you, Claire.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Very nice to see you. Unlike Ed Miliband, I will say I apologise for his ridiculousness when he proclaimed that you were missing in action when you were actually on maternity leave looking after your newborn. So welcome to the Morning Glory show for that.
Thanks so much, Mike. The problem with these progressives is always the rank hypocrisy. That is the issue.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, it's been a bad week for Ed Miliband, hasn't it? Because I mean, he's been asked several times by yourself and others in Parliament to try and justify some of the things that he's doing, to try and explain why he thinks net zero is still the ultimate aim for the government to try and head for, and he hasn't been able to do it.
Ed is an ideologue, so he's obsessed with climate targets over everything else, and he's going to pursue them no matter what the cost, no matter what it's going to do to your energy bills, no matter what it's going to do to industry and the economy. And he's in a complete bind because last year, just to set out some context of where we are, he had a botched wind auction. He signed up to the highest prices in a decade, 15% higher than the cost of electricity last year, and he's set to do the same. And actually just this week we heard that he's now going to extend those contracts for longer, so he'll be locking us into these higher prices for longer.
Right.
He just can't bring down bills from here with his plans.
No, he can't. And you've said this repeatedly, that, everything that he tries to do, and no matter how many times he says it, the bills just keep going up. We might be getting a little bit of a break in the summer, purely and simply because, people tend to use a little bit less electricity, supposedly, in the summer. But I just got a notice from my electricity company saying, oh, actually, we're going to increase your direct debit because you've been probably using the fan a bit more than you did, 2 months ago.
We're in the third situation now where we're going to be paying £8 billion for wind farms to turn off in the next few years, thanks to his plans. So not even to produce any energy, but simply to turn off. So, this is completely ludicrous. And the difference between us and Labour is that my big priority is cheap energy. You can't do anything in terms of the economy and cost of living unless you've got cheaper energy. And that's the priority. And that's why today we're setting out proposals on nuclear power, because that's reliable, it's 24/7. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of nuclear power. It's also, by the way, clean, it's zero emissions. And actually, if you can take on our proposals, which are radical for nuclear power stations, which make them much cheaper to build, then you can actually cut bills for the country as well.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a much more sensible plan than
it is a very much more sensible plan, and I applaud you for it. But of course, people will say, why didn't you do that when you were in power?
Well, look, when we were in power, we overturned a moratorium on nuclear, which meant that we'd had no new nuclear for 30 years. And guess who was, a prior energy secretary? Oh, there you go, Ed Miliband. So we started 2 nuclear power sites. I signed off a third and set out the plans for the largest increase in nuclear power in 70 years. Labour have scaled back that ambition, and I think that's completely wrong, because what you really want is power that is 24/7, it's reliable, it's secure. Unlike wind and solar, we're getting a lot of the kit from China. We own pretty much all of the supply chain when it comes to nuclear, and these are great British jobs as well. So my thing that I'm saying today, throwing down the gauntlet to Ed, is you should double down on nuclear power. You could back our proposals. I actually think there are a few people on the Labour side who would support what we're doing, which is to massively streamline the cost of nuclear in this country and make sure you can get on and build it quickly. And this, I think, is exactly what we need to be doing if we want to cut bills.
Yeah, I mean, also, we need to get away from this obsession with telling everybody they need an electric car. We had Hardy Alexander last weekend telling everyone that they should get an electric car. The government's going to offer them apparently £3,750 as a kind of grant in order for them to buy one. She then admits that she doesn't have one, but she's thinking of getting one. Then we had this other ludicrous idea of £25 million is going to be spent on putting gutters into the street so that people can run their cable into their electric-powered car if it happens to be parked outside their house. You know, it all seems to me to be a very, very distracting and ridiculous kind of project that they want people to try and do things which are meaningless and hopeless, aren't they?
Tension. On the one hand, they're saying, oh, this is cheap, this is great. On the other hand, actually look at the policies, and all it is more subsidies. So they set out policies this week to spend, I think it was hundreds of millions, subsidising people to get EVs. They've set out policies where they're going to subsidise industry for their high energy costs. And none of this is actually addressing the problem, which is you need to bring down the costs of goods in this country. You need to bring down the cost of energy. I mean, otherwise, all you're doing is moving the cost of high energy prices onto other people. It'll either be taxpayers or actually Ofgem, I saw, had a policy out a few weeks ago which was completely absurd, which was saying if you were, I think it was a middle earner or a higher earner, you should pay more per unit for your energy than other people. I mean, no country has that. That is completely mad. What you've got to do is deal with the problem at the source, which is bring down the cost of energy. And that's why, like I said, we're going big on nuclear. We're throwing a challenge down to Labour to say you've got to double down on nuclear, give the country what it needs, which is actually cheap, reliable and secure energy.
Yeah, and can you talk people out of getting heat pumps as well? Because I know that you were an advocate of heat pumps for a while, but story in the papers today saying if you did get a heat pump installed in your house, it would cost you a few £1,000 and you wouldn't really get the benefit of it for 25 years. It would take you 25 years to get the money back in terms of how much money you save just by having one.
Believe in consumer choices. If you want to get one, that's great. 1% of the country have them. But what I saw in the papers this week was actually what they're planning is a tax on people who use gas to heat their homes to pay for people who want heat pumps. Now, let me be clear. It's about 8 in 10 people who use gas to either heat their home or cook their food. Right. And increasing the cost for that group of people, so you could pay for a tiny amount of people to have ongoing cheaper heat pumps is wrong, because that group of people is disproportionately poorer, often older, and in many cases completely unable to move off gas their home. It's just not going to work for them to get a heat pump. So again, I think you've got to come back to the root problem that you've got in this country. The cost of electricity is too high, and you need to be looking at that. These are all sticking plasters, and they're not dealing with the real issue, which is making sure that we've got cheap energy so that we can get growth and we can cut bills.
Sure. Now, because it's Friday, I'm going to try and cheer everybody up. I'm going to give you a little treat here. I'm going to play you a clip of you talking to Ed Miliband.
Yesterday, the Secretary of State said I was hiding when I was, in fact, with my 6-month-old baby, who I know he's aware of. So on behalf of all young mums who face these kinds of comments in their first few weeks back to work, can I gently suggest he reflects on those remarks?
I completely respect her decision to be with her young baby, and there was no offence intended. I think it's very, very important that we understand the needs of new parents and indeed parents across the country.
I mean, it would have been nice if he'd actually said the word sorry. I don't know whether we missed that, but he didn't actually say sorry, did he?
No, I don't think that's the word we're going to hear from Ed.
Shocking, absolutely shocking. Good to see you, Claire. Thanks very much indeed. Claire Coutinho, the Shadow Energy Secretary, saying what she wants is for people to have cheaper energy. Well, I think we all want that. One here from Louise in Kent. I'm sick of the migrant situation and the French saying they can't do anything. In their hour of need in World War II, we stood up and beat the Nazis. But in our hour of need, Europe and especially the French won't help us stop this invasion of illegal migrants. We've lost our once great little island. And a lot of people feeling very, very downbeat about all of that. John from Staffordshire says, my 14-year-old can't wait to vote for reform. He loves Farage because he is a disruptor. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do now is we're going to talk to Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Nigel, very good morning to you.
Mike, long time no see.
Long time no see. Very nice to see you. Welcome to Morning Glory. You know, I think
Pleasure.
Last time we spoke, I was on a completely different show, and I now get up at a ridiculous hour of the morning to come in and cheer everybody up. But it's been very tough this week, Nigel, because it's been a terrible week for Britain, really, hasn't it? You know, this ghastly, awful migrant story from Afghanistan and the mess that was made by the last government. I know you weren't a part of all of that. But, you know, how do we recover from this? Because it looks as though we're going to be suffering the slings and arrows of this Afghan deal for many, many years to come.
Yeah, we'll be picking up this, whether it's several hundred million or billions, we won't know fully until, I guess, there's either an independent inquiry or some of the select committees that should have been all over this particular issue now given full access to the papers that are going to give them the information to allow us to know exactly how much of our money is being spent on bringing or have brought over thousands of Afghani people from Afghanistan. Some of them will be genuine, Mike, but the vast majority will not be genuine. Right. And it begs all sorts of questions as to why this was allowed to happen. I can understand right at the very beginning, a Secretary of State being given an advice by his officials to say that this so-called accident has happened and therefore we need to take urgent action to protect the lives of those on that list. But that should have only lasted 4 months. It lasted over 2 years. And it also begs another question, which is that there is a committee called the Intelligence and Security Committee in Parliament, which is combined MPs and peers together. They have signed the Official Secrets Act. Why were they not given access to all this information from day one? The super injunction, which was slapped on journalists and other people, has basically gagged everybody for the last 2 years from asking the pertinent questions. And one pertinent question from me is they say that this must never happen again. And my goodness me, over my 32 years as an MP, how many times in the House of Commons have I heard after one catastrophe after another, this must never happen again? Why don't we play this should never happen in the first place?
Yes.
And I'll give you one sort of example, Mike, is if you're removing nuclear waste, are you going to not have protocols in place to ensure that a catastrophe doesn't happen? Are you going to follow strict rules that you've signed yourself to ensure the safety of everybody involved in the carrying of that sensitive material? And what this Marine was doing exactly the same. This was hugely sensitive material, which should have only gone to a very, very small number of people, instead of which it seemed to have gone out to a large number of people. The fear was that the Taliban had got access to it and the government panicked.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems incredible, doesn't it, that the government would even consider what they actually ended up doing. You know, Grant Shapps is speaking apparently this morning. We've been trying to get him on the show, but so far we haven't had any success. But, you know, the fact that any sort of serving minister in any government in this country would consider it a really, really good idea to withhold information and deliberately withhold it from the public, despite the fact that they're spending all this money. I spoke to Jacob Rees-Mogg this week, who said it's unprecedented for a government to spend that kind of money, £7 to £8 billion, without first running it through Parliament.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, why do people elect 650 members of Parliament? It is so that they can hold the government to account. If they have been denied access to an important information. Listen, if it is £7 billion, like, this is a substantial sum of money. I don't know how much the winter fuel payments would cost, but it wouldn't be anywhere near that.
Less than one. Less than 1 billion.
Exactly. So it wouldn't be anywhere near that. And so, to me, I do believe now that all these select committees, the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament, need to look at this. There does need to be an independent inquiry running alongside that as well, because funnily enough, if the government doesn't trust its own member of Parliament to be able to hold account their own government, then why should we? And so therefore, it does seem to me the best thing to do is to have an independent inquiry to look at this from beginning to end. It's an absolute disaster, and it's cost the taxpayer a huge sum of money. And also, it does beg other questions, Mike, as to are there other super injunctions that are out there now at this moment in time? And it is such a powerful thing that it actually stopped anybody who knew about this leak from saying anything, from telling anybody. We understand that John Healey at one stage was not able to tell Keir Starmer about it. So, you know, it does really beg so many questions. It's incredibly worrying for democracy as well. But I want to just add one thing as well, because I've just been reading around the subject, and it seems as if Harriet Harman is having a go at Lindsay Hoyle because he knew about this and he didn't inform Parliament. Well, of course, he was under the same super injunction as everybody else. He was only told in order that if anybody within Parliament raised it, that he was able to deal with it more efficiently. And Harriet Harman should have known that. And so it's an absolute red herring to suggest that the Speaker had any authority whatsoever on this. The super injunction covered everybody.
Yeah, although we all remember when Ryan Giggs was had taken out a super injunction, you know, his name was revealed in the House of Commons because of parliamentary privilege, despite the super injunction. Clearly, you know, you might argue it's not quite as important as something like the Afghanistan scenario. But what's the difference?
Yeah, well, it is the level of importance, I think, with Ryan Giggs, absolutely, and with celebrities. Celebrities apparently take them out willy-nilly. And so they're there. But we're now talking about the possible endangerment of the lives of up to 20,000 people. Now, the other thing, Mike, on this is that we understand that, and if you think about the numbers involved, 20,000, nowhere near that number were involved in supporting the British Armed Forces when they were in Afghanistan. So we know that the vast majority of this 20,000 were trying it on. Some of them may well have been criminals. Some of them may have had criminal records. And we just simply don't know who they are, what they've done in the past. But we do know that a ton of them were simply had nothing to do with the British Armed Forces. They just want to settle in the United Kingdom. And so, you know, what analysis is now going to be done of those that have settled in the United Kingdom as to whether they deserve to be here or not? Never mind bring their relatives over.
Yeah, exactly right. Because the number I'm told this morning in the papers could balloon to something like over 100,000, which is absolutely outrageous. Listen, Nigel, great to talk to you. We could do this for a lot longer, but I've got to run because we're out of time. Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Coming up, we've got Keith Best, ex-Chief Executive of the Immigration Advisory Service, former Conservative MP. How about this? And I've got a lot of these, right? I'm going to read this one out from Rob in Bulford in Wiltshire. He says, I live in the heart of the UK's biggest military and MOD training area in Wiltshire. I now understand why in our village and surrounding areas that we have been inundated with Afghans. All have been housed around the area, mainly in what should have been housing for military personnel. This is madness, bringing potential enemies of the state into the heart of the military, and MOD is an atrocity just waiting to happen. It's not a case of if, it's a case of when. This is disgraceful. God help us. Rob, thank you very much indeed. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:43. Been asking you for some good news stories because we've had a terrible week and it hasn't been great. And Mark has come out trumps. Have a look.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Derby. Just got to tell you about last night. Oh, I nearly blew it last night. I went for a drink and something to eat to get ready for the girls' game. Got home, set myself up, fell asleep on the settee. 9:30, woke up, thought, oh my God, I'm missing the match. I'd better watch it quickly. We've probably won by now. I turned the telly on. we were 2-0 down. I thought, oh my God, with all Keir Starmer's doing to the country, this is the final straw. That's it, I'm off to bed. I can't take any more if the England girls are going to lose as well. Suddenly, I was asleep. My phone started making all funny noises. I went to my phone, looked, and people were posting about the girls. And I put the phone back on, and we were at penalties. And then she scored, Lucy Bronze, and I shouted out dead loud and woke me missus up. I'm so happy that we won. I just wanted to tell you.
Mark, that's very sweet. Quite sweet, really. Mike, great show as usual. I'm off to Caldwell Park in the Lincolnshire Wolds for a weekend of motorsport. I can highly recommend it, says Julia from Mansfield. Mike, great show, says Clive in Leeds. Here's a feel-good Friday feeling for you. Off to Newmarket to spend the weekend with my best man and his family. A beer festival tonight, watching the Lions' first test against the Aussies tomorrow, followed by an afternoon at the races. A weekend away from all the Starmageddon madness. Very good. Well, I'm sorry to bring you back down to reality, but Keith Best is here, ex-Chief Executive of the Immigration Advisory Service, former Conservative MP. Keith, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Good to be on your show. I am past Chief Executive. I'm no longer Chief Executive.
Yes, I did say ex-Chief Executive, I think. Yes, not to worry.
Yes.
Well, you're probably well out.
At my age, I'm pretty ex-everything.
Yeah, it's probably a very good place to be, I would imagine. You wouldn't want to be in charge of the Immigration Advisory Service at this point in time.
No.
Everything seems to have gone mad. The wheels have come off. You've got more immigrants now than we can shake a stick at. And we've now seemingly got this Afghan problem, which is going to be even bigger over the course of the next few weeks and months, it would seem.
Yeah, I mean, just to put it on the Afghan side, just to put it into context, I mean, there are now actually fewer than 50,000 Afghans in this country, which, if you look in comparison with other people who come, it's a pretty small number.
Is
but,
it?
I mean,
well, I
it
think
is
it's a pretty
mess.
big number, actually. I mean,
Well,
50,000 extra people than we had before is a big number, and it's likely that, according to the Telegraph this morning, that number could go to over 100,000.
Well, that's going to depend very much on what happens, and if Nigel's right and there's a proper inquiry. I'm afraid inquiries don't come up with reports in nanoseconds. I mean, that's going to take a long time to sort all this out anyway.
But we have got an immigration crisis in this country. I mean, I think even Keir Starmer has admitted that. A few years ago, the Labour government were very keen on having immigrants coming into the country. When Tony Blair was in charge, they actually decided it was a good thing to invite more and more people in because we needed them to work and we needed them to, to prop up the economy and all the rest of it. But it's kind of spiralled out of control, isn't it?
Well, it's a mess because, of course, I mean, one of the promises about Brexit was stopping free movement of people from Europe, over which the government had no control because there was free movement. So now they have control, but bizarrely, of course, we're now getting more people coming in legitimately than we did when we were actually members of the European Union. I mean, the numbers have come down. I mean, last year was 430,000 net migrants in this country. That was down by about a third from the previous year, largely because of more people leaving. And you've got to remember that the last government, in its final stages, did, for example, take away the right of students to bring in dependents. So that is now beginning to have an effect. So, I mean, the last government was beginning to get this really under control.
Yeah.
But, of course, I mean, we've now seen this spiralling of people wanting to come here. Understandably, I mean, we're a very attractive country. We have the rule of law. We had a Prime Minister who was ruled to have prorogued Parliament illegally.
Well, the problem is, Keith, though, that the people who are already living here, and many of those may already be immigrants, first generation or second generation, they're noticing that the country is changing because of all the people that are coming in, and the sheer numbers of people coming in are having a massive effect. And so the country is not the same country that I grew up in, and the same country that you grew up in. When you and I were young, you would always have welcoming news for immigrants that would come from whichever country they came from, whether it was Italy, whether it was France, whether it was India, whether it was Jamaica, but it was very much a minority, whereas now there are parts of this country where people who have come from elsewhere are in the majority.
Well, I can understand that, and I can understand. I mean, it's all about the pace of change, isn't it? I mean, change has been taking place over history. I mean, we all go through change, but it's the pace of change.
I've never seen change like this, though.
No, and also I think people are concerned about the culture and whether that's being changed in some way. I mean, there are some very vocal groups that want to promote particular cultures, and that may slant people's views as well as to thinking things are changing more rapidly than they might otherwise have done. But I mean, when you think about it, you know, I mean, we're a population of 60 million people. I mean, most people in this country will have never clapped eyes on an asylum seeker or a refugee. I mean, when you look at the number of asylum applications in this country as a percentage of the population, I mean, it's about 16 people per 10,000 of the resident population, so it's a tiny number.
Yeah, but it continues
less than in Europe.
Yeah, but it continues to grow, though, Keith. And you know, the people who have been making those kinds of statements over time have now been shown to be completely misreading the population's views, because, you know, it's all very well to say, oh, it's just a small number compared to the 60 million or so people that we've got living here. But, you know, there's no question that over the course of the last, say, 20 years or so, we've probably had an influx of at least 5 to possibly 10 million new people who weren't here before. You know, well, you've just got to walk around the streets of London to know that it's a much busier place than it was when I grew up in the 1960s and 70s.
Yeah, quite a lot of those people are tourists, at least they are at this time of year. But I mean, I take your point, and I think
I'm not talking about the tourists. You know, come on, don't be silly.
Yeah,
I've been living here for a long time, Keith,
yeah.
and I'm pretty sure that this country has got many more people in it than there were when I was born.
Well, I think like the other thing is that people, understandably, if they're coming from overseas and settling in this country, they will want to settle amongst people similar to themselves. So you're not seeing a kind of even distribution of migrants into the country. There is a concentration of migrants in particular parts, and that does worry people. And we saw that in, you know,
as it should. I mean, have you been to Whitechapel lately?
Yeah, I go there very regularly.
Right.
There's some very good curry houses.
There are very good curry houses, but Whitechapel is not the Whitechapel that I grew up in. You know, I used to go to Brick Lane Market to buy bicycles, you know, and now that whole part of London is completely and utterly changed.
Well, and of course, Whitechapel has always been. I mean, you remember when there were the Russian pogroms at the turn of the last century. I mean,
not that
people.
old.
No, but you know, there was a large Jewish population that settled in White. I mean, tradition. Then the large Bengali population settled there. So I mean, you know, incoming migrants have tended to concentrate in that Tower Hamlets, Whitechapel area.
Yeah,
it's a bit like Lower East Side Manhattan.
Yeah,
you know,
but they didn't build a giant mosque, and they didn't make the tube station have an Urdu sign on it either. You know,
well, what they did is they converted a Christian church into a synagogue, and then the synagogue got converted into a mosque, and you can still see the signs on the sign of the old church.
Yeah. But I think anyway, listen, we haven't got time to continue this, but we should at some point do it in a much longer form, because, you know, there is a problem, I think, in this country that a lot of people don't want to recognise. Keith, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Keith Best, ex-Chief Executive of the Immigration Advisory Service, former Conservative MP. Coming up, we're going to speak to Heidi Bakram, whose family members were murdered and taken hostage by Hamas. Before we do that, though, let's have another look at the old tech tycoon story. You know, this is the guy from a company called Astronomer. His name's Andy Byron, and he was filmed at a Coldplay concert. Have a look at this.
Oh, look at these two. All right, come on. You're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy.
Now, apropos of that, I've just found a tweet from last night, from about 10 hours ago, from somebody called Alex Cohen, who says this: I was fired from Astronomer today. I ran our company's events team. It turns out our CEO and head of HR were having an affair and got caught at the Coldplay concert that I bought the company tickets to. He says they blamed me for getting caught and fired me on the spot. I'm taking some time to reflect and we'll start looking for new jobs soon. What a great story. This story's got everything. We'll come back to that. 7:53.
We do need to remind Deborah Turness, who's the head of BBC News, that actually the Hamas government is also a prescribed terrorist organisation in this country, in America and many of our allies. Does this surprise you that the head of BBC News doesn't know that Hamas as an entity is one big terrorist organisation?
Shocks me because it's very clear, but that explains why they haven't called them a terrorist organisation. And of course, you're using her logic. Hitler was only the head of the political wing of the Nazi Party.
And there you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Of course, we've got lots of really, really interesting messages from you today, trying to cheer ourselves up because there's so many bad things going on in the world, and I'm afraid this latest conversation I'm about to have is not going to do much to cheer you up, because it's another example of what I would call blatant anti-Semitism. Heidi Backram is here. Heidi, very good morning to you. Morning, Heidi.
Hi, Mike.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk this morning about this story from Parliament, where a cross-party event was organised in Parliament with Brendan O'Hara MP in partnership with the Council for Arab British Understanding and Oxfam, basically. They hired this guy, Abu Bakr Abed, a Palestinian journalist and commentator. And what happened then?
So he gave this talk in Parliament, and I saw the video online, and he started to talk about that the Gazans would resist until liberation, and that kind of made me think, oh, this doesn't seem like a Gazan just telling his story about suffering. This seems like pushing an agenda of some sort. And then he said about how he couldn't envisage a time when the two states could live next to each other as a two-state solution, and that would be like living next to your killers. So it felt very unpeaceful, unhelpful kind of speech that he was giving. And given that it was in front of an Oxfam banner, I just thought that was really a jarring, kind of odd situation to hear those words in. And when I looked at his posts on October 7th, I realised that he was posting fairly positive messages about what was happening to my family at that moment. So it was like, just as my family were being held hostage and being murdered, he was posting, Inshallah, I hope this bodes well for our liberation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really appalling, isn't it? And isn't it surprising that these characters continue to be feted, if you like, by sort of establishment figures like MPs, such as Brendan O'Hara? You'd think that they would check back to see what was being said then. And if they did do that, then why would they even consider using him?
I mean, this is what we've seen in the last 21 months, is that normally reputable organisations like Oxfam that you would think were, very moral, very focused on humanitarian aid, and we would normally support that wholeheartedly, are taking this dark path towards more politicisation, more radical, extreme positions, possibly only on this issue, actually, which is what stands out to me, is that, you don't see this kind of talk from these organisations on other geopolitical conflicts or famine or crisis elsewhere. We just see it on Israel.
Yeah, it is. It really is appalling, isn't it? And it doesn't seem to be getting any better. It seems to be getting worse.
Yeah, I think some of these organisations have been totally captured by a particular agenda, and they have staff or people in them that are coming at it with a bias. And I think that's really dangerous. And I think, for me, when I saw that person sitting in front of a very reputable organisation's banner, it was like a gut punch.
Yeah, I bet.
Because it's like, then they're saying that this person's position is legitimate. And I feel like that person's position was extremely horrific.
Right.
And this is the person that won the Press Journalist of the Year from Press TV. And that's the Iranian state regime channel. So this is someone that we're inviting into the heart of democracy. And frankly, I think it's terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Oxfam say they condemn all violence and targeting of civilians, and they're committed to ensuring a just and lasting peace for Palestinians and Israelis. Well, he isn't, is he?
Well, no. And so we know that that's kind of, they're just saying that because they got caught.
Right.
And actually, this is not the first time that Oxfam has invited quite extreme people into Parliament. Last year, they had a group that they brought in called Parents for Palestine, which sound very fluffy and innocuous. And that's what happens, right? It's a kind of Trojan horse. And they're radicalizing children, and they're getting kids to color in pages where Israel is erased from the map. So, these are becoming normalized. And we saw that report earlier in the week where, they were finding that middle-class anti-Semitism was becoming normalized.
Yeah.
And this is what we're seeing. These professional organizations are becoming quite hateful.
Yeah, absolutely right. Shocking stuff. Heidi, thank you very much for talking to us. Appreciate it. And we obviously sympathise with what you're saying. Heidi Backram there, whose family members were murdered and taken hostage by Hamas. For context, just in case you're wondering why she feels the way she does. I think she's entitled to. Mike says, Jenny and Bicester, these Afghans worked alongside our forces, therefore they have military training, UK military training, so why are we not recruiting them straight into an Afghan unit, the same as the Gurkhas? That would stop any who are using the scheme as a backdoor. Very good point. And on the good news front, Jamie and Karen from the Isle of Wight say, brilliant show. We're down in Brighton for the weekend to see Lynyrd Skynyrd tonight, getting our feel-good fix of southern rock and beer. Have a great time. Lynyrd Skynyrd, wow. 2 minutes past 8. We'll be back after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, now, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 5 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Alex Phillips is going to be here to take you through to 1. Big weekend coming up, of course. It is Friday, the 18th of July. Apparently, it's going to be a bit wet, unfortunately. We've been trying to find reasons to be cheerful because it's been a pretty miserable week. An awful lot of you, after the revelations about the Afghanistan airlift and the cover-up and the super injunction and the fact that the government of Rishi Sunak tried to pretty much pull the wool over our eyes and give us absolutely no information whatsoever about a terrible, terrible scandal that they were hoping to keep hidden. Grant Shapps apparently is talking this morning to various other different news outlets. He's not coming to us. I don't know why. We would like him to. We asked him to. But so far we haven't heard what he's got to say. But as soon as we do hear what he's got to say about it, we will bring it to you. We do know, of course, that there are several people like Michael Gove who did know, like Ben Wallace who did know, and of course like Rishi Sunak who did know, who have previously said that, you know, we believe that this was all done in the best interest of those who would have been killed by the Taliban. But it's got a terrible stench, it's got a terrible stink. And for all of those people who say it's got nothing to do with Keir Starmer, you know, the Labour government actually kept the injunction on for longer than the Tories had it. In the first place, the Tories put it on around about September of 2023. Obviously, they lost power in July. Some people think that many of the reasons why Rishi Sunak wanted the election early was to get rid of this super injunction, because when people found out what was going on, how many thousands of people were coming to live here and being given free homes with all of their children, their wives and some other extended members of their family, it would be an absolute dagger blow to the Tories. You know, but what really happened was that Labour took it over and they kept it going for more than a year. So at the end of the day, you know, they don't deserve any sort of kudos for this at all. Let's get a voice note from Judith.
It's Judith from Maltoffs, West Yorkshire. Keir Starmer's going to give the EU millions so we can be closer to them. In other words, we'll be in, except by name only. David Lammy can't visit a country without handing them millions. He even gave 70 million to Singapore, which is a very rich country. I thought we were skint. You're supposed to stop spending when you're up to your neck in debt. These idiots will see this country under, with all the illegal immigrants they're allowing to come here and all the spending they're doing. They are totally incompetent. I've never ever seen a set of incompetent people like this Labour government. Thank you.
Yep, they absolutely are. Poor old Angela Rayner doesn't even know the rules of engagement. She had a piece written that had to be edited because she's got several things wrong in it. That's a story that we'll get into a little bit later on. Also, of course, forget about the 70 million we gave to Singapore. What about the 90-odd million we gave to Syria, which they've used basically to start blowing people up? Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Israel are now bombing them because they've been attacking the Druze population and Christians as well. 03444991000. Goes from bad to worse for Keir Starmer. John Rentoul's here, though. I'm sure he'll have a different view. He's chief political commentator at The Independent. This is Morning Glory. We're going to try and get some feel-good feeling into this show this morning. So if you're doing anything that you really, really enjoy, do let us know what it is and we'll pass it on to everybody else. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Jem in Gravesend says this. Hi, Mike. Very feel-good Friday. I'm currently halfway through a 2-week holiday in Cornwall. It's a beautiful morning down here today. At 9 a.m, I shall be sailing out of Penzance to spend a couple of hours on a small boat fishing in the sea around St Michael's Mount, looking to land some sea bass for tonight's dinner. Great show as always. That sounds great. What a fantastic way to spend it. Morning, Mike, says Darren in the Vale of Glamorgan. We're off to St Helena in the South Atlantic for a few years. It's beautiful and like going back to the 80s when life was simpler. Also, it hasn't been given away by this shambles of a government yet. I'll be listening to the podcast. Keep up the good work. Well, hopefully you can listen to it live over there, can't you? Tim, at the moment at Euston, says, time to make manifestos a legal contract with the people. If they don't deliver or show significant implementation in 12 months, election should be legally required. Well, I wrote a piece in The Sun this week saying that, you know what, it might be a good time to actually have an election because the public have lost faith in the two major parties after what they've discovered about what happened with the Afghanistan airlift cover-up. Absolutely disgraceful. Before we talk to John Rentoul, let's get a gaff, because it is Friday, of course, and this is what we do. Here's Jeremy Carr.
All right, Jez.
Not bad, bit annoyed, you know.
Yeah, I know,
on his
I
arse.
try him and all. Right, what it is, I've been saying this, I love Mike's show and all. Sorry, I love your show and all, but...
sorry, hold on a second. So sorry.
No, Mike's show's great. I love it, right?
Right, so you love Mike's show, but you don't like this show?
No, of course I love your show. Don't worry about that. I miss
Which one do you prefer?
I've got to say Mike, sorry, Jez. But I like when you're both together, if that's any good. Sorry, Jez, sorry, mate. But listen, July the 3rd, 2025.
His line's gone dead. What's he saying? I can't hear a blip. I'm joking. Listen, I am only here. I'm messing. I'm only here in reference to the dear great... Shush! Shush!
On this one.
Shush!
Deary me. Listen, I didn't choose that one, OK? Just because he likes me better than Jeremy. I'm sorry about that, Jez. What can I say? One of those things. Now, let's have a look at what Keir Starmer's been up to, right? Because you may have been here listening yesterday when we got the news that Jaguar Land Rover were going to lose 500 management jobs. This is as a result of them going woke, basically going broke, losing the ability to sell any cars anywhere. I think they sold something like 57 cars in the month of April, or maybe it was 47 in the month of April in Europe, which is down 95.5% in sales. But before all of that happened, here's what Keir Starmer had to say.
I'm really pleased to announce to you, and I wanted to come to you to announce that we've agreed the basis of a historic economic prosperity deal. And that is a deal that will protect British businesses and save thousands of jobs in Britain. Really important, skilled, well-paid jobs. And as Adrian said, I was here with you just, as I say, a few weeks ago, and I promised you that I would deliver in the national interest. And today I'm really pleased to come back here to be able to look you in the eye and to say I've delivered on the promise I made to you.
Yeah, Keir Starmer delivered on the promise I made to you. Some weeks later, 500 jobs down the gurgler. Yeah, because Jaguar Land Rover have kiboshed their own business. So well done, Sir Keir. It's like the kiss of death when he turns up, isn't it? You don't want to, oh, Christ, what's happening? Oh, look, no, it's Keir, don't come in. Stay away. Let's talk to John Rentoul, Chief Political Commentator at The Independent. John, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, you'll probably accuse me of being a bit trivial about Jaguar Land Rover, but, you know, he made a big deal about saving a load of jobs for Jaguar Land Rover, and it turns out it was all sort of, you know, in vain, because they've now lost 500 managerial jobs, by and large, not because of the tariffs, but by and large because they've turned their company useless.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the cause of that is, but, I mean, I think you're being a bit as usual, I think, Mike, you're being a bit unfair on the Prime Minister. He delivered his part of the bargain, which was to get the best tariff deal that he could out of Donald Trump, and a better deal than most countries have got. And you know, he's not responsible for the management of Jaguar Land Rover.
But the reason I'm being unfair on him, and I agree with you that I'm being unfair on him, I'm doing it deliberately, because he deliberately uses things like that to make it look as if he's like the saviour of the world, you know, astride, you know, this great sort of behemoth of the British economy, trying to make out like, look what I've done for you, when in fact he hasn't done anything.
Well, he has. He's
really
actually secured a decent tariffs agreement from the Americans. So I think he's entitled.
Well, no, but they're still paying more. People are still paying more for Jaguars in America now than they were before Donald Trump came in. So he hasn't really done much, has he? I mean, all that we've got out of this new trade deal with the Americans, it seems to me, is that we bought a load of their military planes, which is going to cost an awful lot of money, and we haven't got very much in return. So, as usual, his negotiating skills have been, shall we say, slightly wanting.
Not at all. No, I think one of the things he is actually reasonably good at is international negotiations.
Oh, really? Well, which international negotiations do you think he's done well at? Because it turns out this morning we're going to have to pay a bunch of money to the European Union to do something that we didn't need to do. We paid bucket loads of money to Mauritius for the Chagos Islands sell-off. We're paying more money to the Americans than we were getting back. So which international negotiation has he done well in?
The one with Emmanuel Macron. I mean, to get the French to agree to the principle of returning small boat migrants is a huge breakthrough.
No, but do you want to see some footage of what's going on the French?
I've seen the footage, Mike. I mean, that's what's going on now.
Yeah, but it hasn't changed.
Yeah, but if the French have accepted the principle that we can return some of these people, then I think that's a significant breakthrough.
No, but we can't return some of these people. We can return one person, and then we get somebody else sent over the other way. It's hardly a deal, is it? It's completely nonsense. It's rubbish.
No, but it opens up the possibility that we can send them all back.
No,
in which case there'd be no point.
No, it doesn't. It's a one in, one out deal. That's what they call it, right? So it means that if we send anyone back there, they send somebody else back here.
No, but if we are able to expand that scheme so that we can send everyone who comes over back, then it won't be worth their trying to come across, and therefore there will be no returns.
No, but it's not. But that's not the deal. The deal is not let's send them all back and we don't get anything in return. The deal is if we send 50 back, we get 50 coming the other way.
Yes, the deal is a pilot scheme.
How is that? Well, no, it's a pilot scheme. 2, you've said if quite a few times. 3, it's going to cost us a lot more money because we're going to have to then accept people who supposedly legitimately have a reason to come here, and so the number of people
at the same number, so that doesn't affect the numbers on the current situation.
No, of course it does.
Opens up the possibility, Mike. It opens up the possibility that we can return them all. In which case there'll be no point in.
When you say return
I mean, I agree.
them all,
we're a very long way away from that.
Yeah, but hang on.
But when you say impossible, but I haven't seen anybody else come up with a better idea.
No, but when you say return them all, what do you mean by that? We can't return them all. If 50 people arrive on the beach at Dover, right, and you return 50 people to France because they're not really got the right to be here, they'll send another 50 over. So we'll still have 50 more people here than we had the day before.
No, but if they can.
How is that a good deal?
And we're I accept we're a long way away from that situation, but we're slightly closer as a result of what he's negotiated with Emmanuel Macron.
Right.
If we can get to the position where we can send them all back, then there won't be any point coming, and that'll be the end of the small boats.
Well, no, there will be.
I agree. That sounds like pie in the sky.
It does.
He has made progress, which I thought was impossible, which was to get the French to agree to the principle.
No, but he specialises. But he specialises in signing deals that mean nothing. I mean, have a look at what he did yesterday, right? This is him signing the Kensington Treaty with the German Chancellor, Merz.
To have you here today, particularly to sign this Kensington Treaty, which is a very special treaty because it's the first of its kind ever, if you can believe it, between our two countries. Yeah. And I see it very much as evidence of the closeness of our relationship as it stands today, the strength of our values, the strength of our joint approach, but also very much as a statement of intent, a statement of our ambition to work ever more closely together, the closest of allies, and whether that's on defence, security, trade, the economy, energy, covers so much in this treaty. And so this is a really historic signing of a historic agreement.
I mean, poor old Chancellor Merz is standing there going, what's he talking about? A signature of intent. And he did the same thing with the Prime Minister of Czechia earlier, which I must have confessed I didn't realise had been renamed Czechia. I thought it was still the Czech Republic, where he said we're going to sign a memorandum of understanding. He loves signing things that mean nothing at all.
Well, yes, that's what a lot of international diplomacy is about. But he has also signed a meaningful trade agreement with India, which
where we get more Indian people coming to work here, and we get very little in return.
No, that is not what is in the Indian
it is.
trade agreement. No, it isn't, Mike.
Yes, it is. It means that Indian firms can come to this country and hire loads of Indian people to come and work here. That's what it means.
No, it doesn't.
Well, what do you think it means?
He's also managed to get a favourable deal on tariffs that other countries do not have with America. And as I say, he's made limited progress, I admit, but significant progress with Emmanuel Macron. So he's not. A lot of it may be flannel and diplomacy.
Most of it is flannel. Yeah, but I mean, but it's because it impresses people like you, John, because you're inside the Westminster bubble and you go, yeah, all right, well, this all seems great.
It doesn't. But it doesn't impress
the general populace of the country. who I represent and who I talk to every day, don't think
No, I'm not having this.
Keir Starmer. No, sorry.
Oh, I'm a populist, me.
No, I'm not a populist.
Work,
no, I'm not a populist, John. But what I don't do is work for the Independent. This is not a personal attack on you. But you know, you talk to people in Westminster every single day. That's what you do. You're very good at it, and you know what's going on, and you've got your hand on the tiller of the Westminster bubble, and you know what they're saying. But what you don't know is what's going on outside of it. And what's going on outside of it is that people are sick to death of being lied to by the government. The last government, it turns out, tried to withhold so much information from us that they tried to pretend that they weren't importing tens of thousands of Afghan families.
Well, they were trying to protect people's lives.
No,
right?
but what the end result, though, has been, and they've even admitted this, that the people who have come in have by far and away outweighed those who should have come in because of a blunder made by a man who was a Royal Marine working in the Ministry of Defence. You know, and it's an absolutely shameful episode, a complete disaster. Grant Shapps, I understand, is talking this morning about.
And how does that mean that I'm out of touch, Mike? I mean, I won't have this ridiculous.
I mean,
not absolute nonsense. Whenever I cite information from opinion polls, you say, "Oh, well, that's not what people I talk to say."
Right.
I'm much more in touch with public opinion than you are.
Well, no, you're not.
We'll have less of this.
But it's not about you and I. I'm just saying that.
Well, it is, because you just made a personal attack on me, Mike.
No, I didn't. Listen. All right, John. I apologise if you took it as a personal attack. I didn't mean it like that. What I mean is that you operate in a different, slightly, a scented world where everybody talks about politics and everybody talks about the nuances of what things like the deal with India are. You know, ordinary people in this country couldn't give a stuff about whether he's got the Chancellor of Germany in Downing Street or the Prime Minister of Czechia or how many deals he's done trade-wise. What they want to know is how their lives are being improved. And quite frankly, their lives are not being improved. And so they feel worse off. They feel as though the economy is out of control. You know, people are losing their jobs. They've lost for 5 months in a row. Jobs are down. You know, inflation's up. Costs of everything are going up, So what I'm saying is that there's no point in sitting there and saying to me that Starmer's done quite well in this area and that area. He's a bloody disaster.
Well, he's extremely unpopular,
isn't he?
But I'm prepared to give him credit when he does the right thing. And on occasions he has done the right thing. So we'll
just have to agree to disagree. But the point, what I'm saying is that this has been another terrible week for politics in the sense that people have been really, really upset this week, talking to me, saying that they've lost all faith in the system. We find out that the Tory government from 3 years ago was trying to deliberately mislead the country. We're trying to keep a story secret. We're flying people in by the thousands in unmarked planes, under cover of darkness, moving them into Ministry of Defence hostels and hotels and putting them into houses. It's a disaster. And bizarrely, the Labour government found out about it when they got in July last year, and they kept the injunction for even longer than the Tories had it.
Yeah, well, yes, by definition. But I mean, presumably because they thought that lives were at risk. And
but that's clearly not true, is it?
Well, I don't know that you can say that it's clearly not true, Mike. I don't know enough about the facts of the
I know enough about the facts, because I've been talking to military people about it as well. And the fact is that of the 18,500 people who have come here, about 17,000 of them are bogus. But we brought them in anyway because we didn't know whether they were bogus or not.
Well, you may know more about this than I do. I mean, I think if lives are at risk, then you can understand why people have taken the cautious view.
Yeah, I know, but the problem is that the end result is that we end up taking a thick end of £7 or £8 billion that we have to now pay to have people living in this country for free for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, well, no, but once you start throwing numbers like that around, I mean that 7 billion figure.
That 7 billion is John Healey's figure.
No, but it's the total cost of all Afghan immigration since.
Well, it's a true number, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not to do with this super injunction.
Yeah, it is. It is.
No. That's the cost of the super injunction people is much lower than that.
No, it's not. No, it isn't. But it may be not that yet. But they say that's what it will be. And now it turns out they're going to sue us as well, and there'll be another £1 billion coming down the pipe.
Yeah, no, well,
you can't dispute any of this stuff, John.
I'm not disputing that it's an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
What I think has to be borne in mind is that we do owe an obligation to people to Afghan people who served with our forces in Afghanistan, because we were there for 20 years, just because it's been extremely badly handled doesn't negate that obligation.
No, it doesn't. But the point is that unfortunately we've taken that obligation and run with it to the point where, it's a bit like walking into a crowded room and saying, I'm going to rescue that girl over there, and then you end up taking everybody else. There's 50 people in the room, and you end up, instead of getting one person, you end up getting 50.
Yeah, I completely agree. It has been a disaster.
Absolutely hampered. I can't believe you're missing the opportunity to have a go at Rishi Sunak's government. Come on.
Yeah, but I thought Rishi Sunak was quite a good prime minister. That's just going to get me into even more trouble. But no, but the whole point about this is the administrative incompetence of the original era. And that, admittedly, it hasn't been well handled since. But that was the most.
It's just horrific.
Standing bit of government.
And yet, apparently, the person responsible is still working inside the Ministry of Defence.
I find that absolutely extraordinary. But it can't be down to just one soldier who pressed the button on an email. There are senior people who were responsible for data protection.
Yeah.
And for making sure that sort of thing couldn't happen. It should not be possible.
Well, it shouldn't be. But I was talking to Hugh Andre.
That amount of damage.
Yeah, I was talking to Hugh Andre, who the guy that runs We Served, which is a military organisation, post when people leave the military, and he was saying, he served in Afghanistan. He said there was another leak at the time, around about 10 years earlier, where basically all the soldiers in Helmand were sent an email telling them that they were all going to be fired when they got home. And it wasn't supposed to have gone to them. And you're kind of going, well, who's running this bloody, useless ship of fools? What's going on?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, excellent. Well, listen, John, always good to see you, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. And I apologise once again for saying you're out of touch, even though you might be. Chief Political Commentator with The Independent. Let's get a voice note from Mike on Good News.
Morning, Mike. Mike in North Yorkshire here. Bit cloudy, bit rainy when I set off from near Scarborough, but I'm going to sunny Leyburn today. I'm hoping it's sunny when I get there. I've got a job to do there, and then when I return home, I'm going up to Ashington, just above Newcastle. We've got some marvellous friends we met there on holiday, and we always enjoy their company. They're a pleasure to meet. The people there have made us very welcoming, so it's a good place to go. We're probably going to get a bit intoxicated, have a bit of food with them, and just enjoy the company of the people there. Brilliant place, run down. Thank the Conservatives for that many years ago, but the people have still got strong hearts, and they're lovely, welcoming people.
Lovely, lovely. It's nice that you can sometimes have some good news. There's not a lot of good news out there. We're going to talk to Annabel Denham now, Deputy Comment Editor from The Telegraph, because she's got some bad news for us. Apparently, they want to give the vote to 16-year-olds. Who on earth came up with that stupid idea? Annabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Annabel. I know you've been waiting patiently there. I got a bit carried away with John Rentoul, who doesn't think he's out of touch with the general feelings of the populace. You're not one of those people. What on earth have they been thinking down in Westminster? Why do they want to give the vote to 16-year-olds, for God's sake?
Well, I think, Mike, it's hard to see this as anything other than a deeply cynical move. It's gerrymandering. As the accusations been levelled at the Labour government, it looks very much like they're trying to rig the next general election. The assumption, and certainly it's backed by some of the polling, is that young people will throw their weight behind Labour and they're therefore able to secure some more votes at a time, of course, when their popularity is plummeting, when Keir Starmer's approval rating is absolutely on the floor. So as I say, I think it's extremely cynical. I think it's very poorly thought through. Perhaps the most amusing defence that I've heard, Mike, is the idea that it will improve voter turnout because more people will be getting to the polling booth. Well, that's not actually going to affect the percentage, even if the denominator changes. That'll only have an impact if young people are more likely to vote than older people. And I'm not sure that's guaranteed because, when we've surveyed young people in the past, it's shown that only half of those who are 16 and 17 even want the vote to begin with. Right. And, one hopes, and how delicious it would be, that this might backfire on Labour because whilst, yes, they are polling reasonably well among 16 and 17-year-olds, I think, there's a lot of momentum with reform at the moment. Nigel Farage has proven himself extremely adept on social media, TikTok, these sorts of things, at reaching those younger audiences. And, you know, young people have been known to make protest votes in the past, so perhaps they'll get behind the Greens or, you know, Jeremy Corbyn's new party. So, you know, perhaps it won't have the impact that the Labour government are expecting.
Right. And when, I mean, is it actually happening? I mean, because it sounds as though, yes, they put it in their manifesto and it was all a bit woolly and people were saying, yeah, well, when's it coming? When will it actually come in? So when will 16-year-olds actually be able to vote?
Well, the intention is that they'll be able to vote at the next general election.
Right.
So anybody who's going to be turning 16 in 2029, we assume, will be able to exercise that right. And as I say, you know, it doesn't look like Labour are going to hesitate to bring this in because they think that it's favourable to them electorally to have those younger people getting to the polling booth. But, you know, there's so much inconsistency with this, Mike. All of the things that you're not allowed to do when you're 16, you can't drink, you can't drive, you can't join the army without parental consent. You can get married, even though the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, yesterday tried to claim that you couldn't.
Yeah, she got that wrong, didn't she?
Yeah, she did get that wrong. And, you know, she was a sitting MP at the time that the marriage age was raised from 16 to 17 in 2023, but it seems to have slipped her mind. So, you know, it's just extremely poorly thought through and inconsistent. And, you know, Keir Starmer saying, well, some young people pay taxes. Well, yes, some do. There are very, very small.
Not very many.
No, children are more dependent on their parents now than they are when we last lowered the voting age in 1969. You know, there are very few young people who are paying taxes who are in work. But, you know, does this also mean that the 9.2 economically inactive people in Britain should have that right taken away from them? You know, do you have to be a taxpayer in order to be able to...
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was one of the things that we said this morning. If the sort of the qualification now for voting is that you pay tax, then that takes an awful lot of people out of the voting sector, doesn't it? And the whole business of just, as you say, the desperation. Apparently, I mean, 16-year-olds can't even buy a can of spray paint. And they can't buy super glue, but yet they can vote. And a lot of people said to me since the announcement, you shouldn't be able to vote for something that you can't stand for, as it were. And if you can't stand as an MP, you shouldn't be able to vote for one.
No, exactly. I mean, you have to be 18 to stand as an MP. Are Labour now going to look at lowering that to 16? I find that quite difficult to believe, but then again, so many politicians these days behave like children. Perhaps it couldn't get any worse than it is at the moment. But, you know, this just also feels, Mike, like massive displacement activity. You know, the country is absolutely going down the pan. We had the employment data out yesterday. Unemployment data is rising. There are fewer job vacancies. Inflation is going up. It's remained stubbornly high at 3.6%. Growth is being downgraded. You know, everything is going on. Virtually every data point has worsened since this Labour government came into power, since Labour came into power. And yet this is the measure that they're choosing to implement. You know, shouldn't really parliamentary time be devoted towards how on earth we're going to fix the state that Britain is in?
Well, that would be handy, wouldn't it? Because Britain is in one hell of a state, notwithstanding what John Rentoul said. You know, we've got, you know, unemployment going through the roof. We've got national insurance hikes, meaning that many jobs have been lost. I think we've got 178,000 fewer payroll jobs, 5 months in a row seeing payroll jobs falling. You know, inflation now up to 3.6%, the highest since it's been since January 2024. The list goes on and on and on. Whenever I write anything for you or for The Sun, people say to me, oh, but you didn't mention this or that. And it's like, well, because there's so much that's wrong, you can't put it all in.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, there really is this sense now that Britain is on a permanent decline, and nobody seems to have any of the solutions. And actually, it does connect very closely to the voting issue in some ways, because I think that what we now seem to have is this very narrow clique of politicians who are completely out of touch with, you know, the realities on the ground for most ordinary people in Britain today. And thus, there is this massive sense of disillusionment, of disenfranchisement. You know, the voter turnout in 2024 is estimated to be around 60%. There's a massive drop since 1950. And the reason is that people feel it doesn't really matter who you vote for, the outcome is always the same, that we're just getting this managed decline, that the state is getting bigger, that taxes are going up, that we're being more and more regulated, we want more liberty, and yet we seem to have it taken away from us in all sorts of ways, but whoever is in government. And, you know, so it's no surprise that there is that sense of disenfranchisement among the electorate, and it's not going to be solved by handing the vote to younger people. You know, what we've got to do is fix the fact that you've got this blob, that you've got politicians with their pet projects who want to, you know, find all of these ways to restrict and control our behaviour, who want the government state just to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and seem to think that there's this magic money tree, that there's this group of taxpayers who will always be there to pay for it. And of course they won't. You know, look at the data on the number of people who are fleeing Britain as a direct consequence of the policies that have been brought in by this Labour government. So actually, you know, this voting issue is a displacement activity, and it's distracting us from the fact that there are real problems in our society and in our democracy as a consequence of the fact that people don't think they're getting decent representation.
No, exactly right. It's a shocking state of affairs. Annabelle, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Annabelle Denham, Deputy Commentator at The Telegraph. There, we've got this from Teresa, brackets Christie from Fleet in Hampshire. Good morning, Mike. John Rentoul's observation that negotiating is something that Keir Starmer is reasonably good at made me laugh out loud. Talk about damning with faint praise. Thanks for a great show. And Michael says, Michael from Islington, keep playing that clip of Rodney with that guy. I can't stop laughing. Great stuff. And that, of course, is the German Chancellor. German Friendship Treaty. Zerverd Salad Waffel, says Bill in Cheshire. Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back with more of that after this.
Clearly both of them massive stories, the Afghan scandal on the front page of the Sun today. But I mean, what is really gripping, I think, the nation at the moment is Keir Starmer's pretty shameless ruse to hand 1.5 million 16 and 17-year-olds to vote at the next election. And what you are hearing from the Labour government is an attempt to justify this as expanding the democratic exercise. But actually, most people will see it for what it is, which is basically a ploy for Labour to try and boost their chances at the next election.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 20 minutes to 9. We're here, of course, until 10 o'clock. Plank of the Week coming up later on tonight. Also, a James Whale special, which we'll tell you about in a moment. First, a voice note from Darren.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Suffolk. Great show as ever. John Renthal, I thought he was coming across from the far left. How can he say he's made significant progress and then he said he's made limited progress? I mean, come on, I've not heard of anyone with a better solution. Well, how about this one? Everybody that comes across gets the next ferry back, the boats stop within a week, and we set up a processing centre in Calais, and then people with identification and an allocation of quota can come across. How about that? The people trafficking stops overnight. It's not rocket science, Mike. These people do not want to do it. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. Now, coming up, as I say, later on tonight, you'll have the opportunity to watch the interview that Nigel Farage has conducted with James Whale, a titan of broadcasting, a talk presenter, of course, a man who has said that this will be his final interview because he's been fighting terminal cancer for some months and years, really. But it's an incredibly compelling interview, and it's all about looking back on his legendary broadcasting career. Have a look at this.
A lot of people think that you will win the next election. I hope that. But there is the chance, slight chance, that you will lose the next election. What happens then?
Well, look, winning the election, I mean, if I'm the bookie's favourite to be Prime Minister, which I am, doesn't say much for the rest of them, does it, really?
By quite a lot, aren't you? How many now?
No, I mean, we've actually led the last 55 opinion polls in a row.
Yeah.
And they're in a blind state of panic. And Starmer can't cope with it. And he sits in Parliament. He stares at me. He doesn't know what to do. If I walk past him and go, "Morning, Prime Minister," they don't know what to do. And the Tory party, their leader, what's the name of their leader? Oh, Matt Kemmy, yeah. But you've got to laugh. James, we have a chance of doing something really historic, really genuinely historic. And there's a momentum out there. There's an optimism out there. They're going to throw everything they got at us, but I think we're going to do it. And I'm certainly not even contemplating failure.
Nigel Farage in the company of James Whale. You can watch that at 10 p.m. tonight on Talk. It's also going to be available on YouTube today from 10 a.m. Let's talk to Zia Yusuf, head of Doge at Reform UK. Zia, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. This has been another terrible week for politics, hasn't it? I mean, it's playing right into the hands of Reform. This nonsense about, super injunctions, keeping secrets from the British public. Indebting the country to the tune of £8 billion, possibly 10 billion by the time we finish paying compensation. Smuggling in. I mean, literally. I mean, I've said this, and I don't know whether you agree. The biggest people smuggling gang appears to have been the British government, bringing, tens of thousands of Afghans into this country, many of whom we don't even know what they're here for.
Yeah, look, the reality is this has probably been one of the worst weeks for British politics, certainly of my lifetime.
Yeah.
And sometimes people might think these words are being used in a hyperbolic fashion. To call two successive governments people smugglers is simply to use a dictionary definition of the term. How it could be true that the Tories sat around that cabinet table and thought it would be okay to bring turns out in excess of 24,000 Afghans into this country. And were they all genuine asylum seekers? Did all of them serve bravely alongside our troops? Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. You have reports in the Telegraph this morning that according to the Ministry of Defence sources, for every one authentic asylum case, there were 15 bogus ones. 15, and they authorised it anyway. The cost, you talk about, 7 billion, and it could be more. The reality is, if you compound the cost of looking after these people, because they now get a free life forever,
right.
You're talking well in excess of £24 billion. You've got disgraceful, unpatriotic law firms. I mean, I've got a pretty dim view of lawyers generally, but this takes the biscuit. Right. They're now advertising and boasting that they've got hundreds already. Soon it'll be thousands of these Afghans suing the British government, so bleeding the British taxpayer dry even more. Some thanks they get for that. And there's a national security issue. There's an issue for the safety of young women. Just to state statistics, we don't need to cast aspersions subjectively here. Let's just look at the numbers. Afghans are more than 20 times more likely than British people to be convicted of sex offences in this country. That is the highest of any nationality. This is an absolute disgrace. And I want to add this too, because we will commit at Reform to looking to do everything in our power to ensure that every Tory minister who knew about this sat on the information, despite being cloaked in parliamentary privilege, which is a very important point. They could have warned the British people, even if they opposed it at the time. They chose not to because they prioritised their careers and, frankly, because they lacked the courage to do it. We'll commit to looking to ensure that every single one of them that is still an MP will no longer be an MP after the next general election.
Yeah, because, I mean, the scale of just dishonesty, of betrayal, of complete, just absolute and utter disdain for the British public and for the voters of this country, to assume that you could bring in thousands of these people. I mean, because I've been saying this for about a year or two now, that people have been getting in touch with this show and telling me, you know, we've noticed a lot more of these foreign men hanging around. We've noticed a lot more Afghan people, and I don't know why they knew they were Afghans, but they knew that they were in their communities. And I've got this. Let me read you this. This is one of literally hundreds of these kinds of communications. Adam from Doncaster, he says, I served in Afghanistan in 2012, also in Somalia in a private capacity in 2018. I now work for a social housing company in Doncaster where 3 in 5 houses have residents that aren't British and haven't been in this country for 2 years. They don't work, they've got no intention of it, which means we are paying for them indefinitely. Crime in the area is through the roof and the city feels more dangerous. If there were riots this summer, I wouldn't be so quick to condemn them. The UK is on fire and it's the political class who have doused it in petrol and lit the match. That is something that people are saying all over the country, and the social housing business is out of control.
Yeah, look, Britain is a tinderbox. The social contract is hanging by a thread. We've been saying this now for months, almost going a year now, that when it comes to British people, they're always being told sacrifices need to be made, difficult decisions need to be made. There's no money left. When it comes to citizens of foreign countries, including convicted sex offenders, infinite money. There's infinite money for it. You know what's really interesting, Mike? It was almost exactly the same time when Rachel Reeves was announcing that she was withdrawing the winter fuel allowance from British pensioners who had paid into the system their whole lives to save a supposed 1.5 billion quid. At that very same time, this Labour government was rubber stamping a potential cost of £7 billion for tens of thousands of bogus asylum seekers from Afghanistan.
Right.
If that isn't hard evidence that Labour, like the Tories, frankly hate the British people, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, exactly right. And I say this as well to people who yesterday were commenting on the piece I wrote in The Sun saying, why are you having a go at Labour? You know, it was the Tories' mess. Well, yeah, but actually the Labour government kept the injunction on for longer than the Tories did, because the Tories only put it in September of 23. They were out of office in July. The Labour government kept it for a year.
Yeah, look, I think they're both equally to blame. Arguably, I think the Tories are more to blame. Because, Mike, let's not forget, right, the super injunction was put in place months before a general election. You think that's a coincidence?
No.
The Tories got absolutely hammered in that general election. We remember that. But what would have happened had the British people known about this? And suddenly, the big mystery as to why Rishi Sunak went so early with the general election seems like a lot less of a mystery, does it not? Because that super injunction could have been lifted at any point. And at that point, I think you'd have been looking at 0 seats. But all they did was delay the inevitable. That's what's coming to them at the next election.
Exactly right. And it turns out that Grant Shapps has said this morning on BBC Radio 4. We couldn't get him on this show. We asked him to come on. He said that he's defending putting the super injunction on. He said, I would do the same thing again. I would walk over hot coals to save those lives. I'd much rather now be in this interview explaining why the super injunction was required than be in this interview explaining why I failed to act when people were murdered. You know, you can't hide behind that because, you know, people have not been murdered as far as we know because we're still bringing them over. And if they were going to be murdered, how come they haven't been murdered already?
Yeah, you would think he was a political leader for the Afghan people.
Yeah.
Right? The sworn duty of British political leaders and ministers is to take care and look out for the interests of the British people. What about the British women who are statistically going to suffer from a not insignificant number of sex offenders as a direct result of this decision. Again, that's not subjective aspersion. That is backed up by a statistically significant sample of official data. So that is the reality of this situation. I want to add this too. You've had not just him, not just Shapps. You had Ben Wallace, another key perpetrator, also say, far from contrition, apology, I've reflected on it, we shouldn't have done it, doubling and tripling down, I'd have done it again, wanting credit for it. And then you have other people who have, people like Robert Jenrick, who seem to shapeshift more than a chameleon in a kaleidoscope. He's sort of going around talking about issues of Afghans coming here, when, again, he was somebody who had parliamentary privilege. Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's obviously leader of the House, has tweeted this morning that, of course, he could have said something. All of the ministers who knew about this could have said something. So all of these people are complicit. In my view, Mike, we've got to call a spade. They're traitors to their country.
Totally, absolutely agree with you, Zia. Good to talk to you. Zia Yusuf, thank you very much indeed. Head of Doge Reform UK. We've got this from Paul. He says, you get John Not a Story Rental on for comedy value. He certainly makes people laugh trying to defend the indefensible. That's Paul in Hitchin. And Mike says this, the 16 and 17-year-old voting is clearly wrong. How can they be deemed able to make a judgment on the government but not make a judgment as a juror? That is complete and utter nonsense. Absolutely right. Coming up, Steve Berry, our favourite car man, is going to talk to me about Jaguar. I seem to remember last time we spoke about Jaguar, he said that making the car modern was a great idea. Well, hasn't turned out quite like that. We'll be back after this.
Clearly both of them massive stories. The Afghan scandal on the front page of the Sun today. But I mean, what is really gripping, I think, the nation at the moment is Keir Starmer's pretty shameless ruse to have 1.5 million 16 and 17-year-olds to vote at the next election. And what you are hearing from the Labour government is an attempt to justify this as expanding the democratic exercise. But actually, most people will see it for what it is, which is basically a ploy for Labour to try and boost their chances at the next election.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:55. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. The first lie of the day's come out from the Keir Starmer department. Working together with Germany, we are coming for criminal smuggling gangs to secure Britain's borders. Well, Britain's borders are not secure. We're already flying loads of Afghan people in over the top of them. And apart from that, there's a load of people arriving by small boats about every 5 nanoseconds. Let's get a voice note from John.
Morning, Mike. Great show. It's Johnny here from in Wigan. It does entertain me listening to John Renfrew, because it's now got to a stage that when he's ever on the show, I just start laughing, because my God, does he love Keir Starmer. But hey-oh, at least Keir's got one follower that we know about. Great show, Mike. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Let's talk to Steve Berry, former Top Gear presenter, of course, our favourite man when it comes to talking about cars, because, you know, he's the only guy to talk to. Steve, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Now, listen, I don't want to upset you, because I've upset a few people this morning, but I seem to remember the last time we talked about Jaguar, you told me that they were very, very brave and they were going out there and finding a new market, and old fogies like me shouldn't worry about it, because somebody else was going to start buying their cars. It was all going to be very new and trendy. But it all seems to have gone a bit wrong.
How much do you actually know about this story, Mike? How much do you actually know about what's going on? Do you know what Jaguar are actually doing? Do you know they've stopped
Well, I know
making...
they've just fired 500 management people.
I've seen all these figures about how their sales have gone down all over the media going, oh, it's because of their woke rebrand. They've stopped making and selling cars. That is why their sales have reduced by 96%, because they've stopped making cars.
Well, they're a car company, aren't they?
Right. Because people stop buying their cars.
Right, so that's not a great sign, is it? If you make cars, right, and then suddenly people stop buying your cars, so then you stop making your cars, what's the point of you?
Because it's the last-ditch attempt to save Jaguar from the inevitable bankruptcy that was staring them in the face.
Yes.
People didn't want the sort of cars that they were building anymore.
Well, I mean, they're selling fewer cars now than they were, because they've just lost 97.5% of their sales in Europe.
They've stopped making cars and selling cars, Mike. That's why they've stopped.
Yeah,
What
are they going to make? What are they going to make now? Shoes? What?
They're going to make, hopefully, cars like the one that's on the screen.
Yeah, but nobody wants them either.
Just because you don't want it, Mike, doesn't mean that other people don't want it.
Listen, Steve, if you're going to sit there and tell me that this is some kind of genius move by Jaguar, I'm going to start calling for the men in the white coats. They're clearly going down the gurgler because they've made a series of ridiculous decisions.
That's from 60-odd years ago. Jaguar had a glorious era in the 50s and 60s when they couldn't make cars quick enough. The American market for sports cars was booming. The Jaguar was a saloon car or a sports car with unmatched performance for the price. The sales went down and down and down. They had a really dodgy period under British Leyland, which you probably remember.
I do.
They nearly went bankrupt then. They very, very nearly went bankrupt then. They recovered from that when Ford took over. And in the 90s, Ford did a great job and invested, Mike, not millions, not tens of millions, hundreds of millions in reviving the Jaguar brand. And for a while, it worked.
Yeah.
Because everyone thought an affordable sporting saloon, a Jaguar. But guess what changed all of that, mate? The Germans, Audi, BMW, Mercedes, they took that market.
Yeah.
In the face of people saying, I don't want a Jag. I want because I don't remember the XK120 from the 1950s and the E-Type from the early 60s. I want an Audi, a BMW, or a Mercedes. So in the face of declining sales year on year, and it wasn't because there was anything wrong with the cars, I thought the F-Type, which is one of the last cars...
The F-Type's a great car.
Ever built. One of the best cars he ever built, Mike.
Yeah, it's very quick, it's very sweet, it's very neat.
What do you do? And Cadillac have done the same thing. There's a brand everybody knows. Cadillac have done the same thing in the States. They were facing the same problem. Nobody wants our cars.
Then they built the Escalade, and now everybody wants one.
No. They're building an electric car that you would hate that looks like it came from outer space and costs $350,000.
No, I like an Escalade. You know, a couple of mates of mine have got them. They're great cars, and that's what revived Cadillac. The point is, at the end of the day, Steve, you've got to make a car that people like. Jaguar have failed because they've gone woke. It's as simple as that.
No, I told you why they failed. Mike, I've just explained
it.
It
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They've gone woke because of that car there, right next to you, the car you're seeing, the pink car, which is an absolute abomination. You know.
Mike, do you want me to show you the figures where Audi, BMW and Mercedes come up?
It doesn't matter. They've all had the same problem, right? They've all had the same problem, but Audi and Mercedes have done a better job. Jaguar have obviously been badly managed. All I'm saying is I want you to just admit that you got it wrong, Steve.
Mate.
Just admit you got it wrong. We've only got about 30 seconds.
I like you, but you don't know what you're talking about. That's the problem.
Yeah, you're the genius, right? You're the one that told me last time that this would work. You said this will save Jaguar, and since then they've gone to make no cars, and they've fired 500 members of their management. So you've got it wrong.
What we're always going to do. The whole point. Let me see if you can understand this. Their attempt to save Jaguar is to say, instead of making one car and selling it for £35,000, let's make one car and sell it for £350,000. And guess what? That car... Mike, have you seen the new BMW SUVs? Have you seen them? How weird.
I hate them. They look horrible. I don't like them. I'm not buying one.
Well, guess why they look like that, mate? Because Chinese people like that.
Chinese people? All right, well, that's fine. You want to sell cars to China, that's fine. We'll buy cars from China and we'll sell cars to China. And meanwhile, I'll just buy an Italian one. Thanks very much indeed. Steve Berry, top man, got it wrong. It's OK if you can't admit it. Let's go to the news. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and lady. Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 5 minutes past 9. See, we're trying to have some fun here, you know, because it has been a pretty gloomy week and it has been awful, politically speaking. As I said to John Rentoul, you know, we have had pretty much the worst expose of government at its absolute worst. And I say that because I'm talking about the Tory government. You know, Rishi Sunak and Michael Gove and Suella Braverman and Grant Shapps and Robert Jenrick and all the people who knew about the super injunction. Ben Wallace, there he is, an absolute shower of people who are all still defending it, saying that, you know, we had to do the right thing, we had to save lives, as a result of which we've now got tens of thousands of people from Afghanistan living in this country, many of them without the right to live here, really. Many of them probably not even people who had helped the British Army in Afghanistan, which is what they claimed that they had done. We know that a very small number of people were those people who had helped us, and of course everybody in their right mind would say, yes, of course we must rescue them, yes, of course we must bring them to Britain, yes, of course we must look after them. But all the others who are bogus, all the others who have got no claim at all, but who weren't checked out because there wasn't time, absolutely and utterly ridiculous. A cock-up of hilariously ridiculous proportions if it wasn't so serious. And I want to hear from all of you on this. 0344 499 1000. We'll be talking about that, of course, and also the French police talking this morning about how they cannot stop the migrants from coming to this country. These are the ones who are sometimes coming from Afghanistan, but also from many other countries as well. We are helpless, they say. There is a French expression, donner de la tête, and that's the expression I want you all to remember. Donner de la tête, and it means that there's nothing they can do except to hand life jackets, as you can see in that picture, to these people that are coming. Meanwhile, Britain is going to be forced to pay money to the European Union under Labour's Brexit reset. Did we vote for this? I don't seem to remember doing it. According to Keir Starmer, basically we're going to be paying financial contributions to the European Union, including relevant costs associated with the union's work in policy areas such as carbon market rules and food standards. We definitely, I'm sure, voted to leave the European Union back in 2016, didn't we? 0344 499 1000 is the number. Recognition cameras, facial recognition cameras for the Notting Hill Carnival. That's on the front page of the Daily Mail. And, of course, much else besides. Wes Streeting offering an olive branch of sorts to try and stop the doctors' strike, including offering to write off student loans and offering to give them better working conditions, apparently. We shall see what's going on with that. And also, Keir Starmer, is he losing control of his party? He's removed the whip from several MPs, including Diane Abbott. In my experience, if he takes on Diane Abbott, he's going to lose. And that's not going to be good news for him at all. 0344 499 1000 is the number. It's coming up to 8 minutes past 9. This is Morning Glory. We just had Steve Berry on talking about Jaguar, who've just announced that they're going to fire 500 members of their management team because they made such a horlicks of trying to rebrand themselves as something trendy. This from Darren in Bradford. Steve is a motoring journalist. He knows nothing, absolutely nothing. I've been in the motor industry for 45 years, and even I know what's wrong with Jaguar. Yeah, they've stopped making cars, apparently. That doesn't seem like a great idea. Steve Berry is utterly deluded, says Mark in Suffolk, trying to defend Jaguar. How can he keep trying to justify a car manufacturer making something that nobody wants? Mark in Suffolk, thank you very much indeed. Let's talk to Dan Hodges, commentator for the Mail on Sunday. Dan, very good morning to you.
Morning.
So, here we are. I mean, I'm calling this one of the worst weeks in history for politics in general. And I'm not even just talking about Keir Starmer. I'm talking about Rishi Sunak. I'm talking about the whole, ridiculousness of the super injunction, the terrible, terrible toll that has taken on certainly my listeners and viewers who have said that this is the final straw. You know, they've lost all faith in government in general. You know, they hate the Tories, they hate Labour, and they want to go to reform.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's fed into what is, the prevailing national mood, and obviously rightly in this instance, it's exposed the utter incompetence of some of the, senior officials and civil servants, and to an extent ministers, who, are responsible for this absolute utter scandal. I've got to be honest. And coming from a slightly different perspective to quite a lot of people on this, in that I do actually have some sympathy with those Tory ministers, and indeed Labour ministers who inherited this mess, but those Tory ministers who were presented with this situation where there had been this data breach, which was putting at lives potentially thousands of people who had actually, served Britain whilst we were in Afghanistan. But I think you touched on the key element of this. I still don't, setting that aside, I still don't understand why what appears to be a blanket decision was taken to, as a result of this data breach, just allow anybody into Britain who claimed to have been assisting Britain in the country. Right. Because, and this may sound harsh, those people who falsely tried to claim they'd been working with the British and as a result, had to get themselves and their families out of the country, ultimately the responsibility for what happened and the reason they ended up on that list primarily rests with them. Yeah. So I certainly think that ministers and officials should have been much more hard-headed with that section of the list. But I do understand why, in the immediate aftermath of the breach and moving forward, why ministers attempted to keep it secret, because obviously their priority was protect. And just to add, and obviously as we now know, it wasn't just Afghan nationals who were on that list. It was member of the British Security Services, MI6, soldiers, etc.
Yeah, and I get all of those points, and frankly, Ben Wallace probably did the right thing. A lot of people have been very critical of Ben Wallace, including, of course, Dominic Cummings, who said he was the worst Defence Secretary we've ever had. I'm not sure I'd take Dominic Cummings at face value on that one. But I think most people understand that when Ben Wallace was confronted with the news that this leak had happened, and he said, well, let's get an injunction out and keep it safe for 4 months, and I think that was probably the right thing to do. But it was then the subsequent super injunction that Grant Shapps seemed to have got, who's been out and about this morning apparently saying he would do it again in order to save those lives. I think he's wrong about that, because I think by the time the 4 months had passed, it certainly seems to me to be clear that the Taliban probably had got their hands on the list by then anyway. And so it wasn't any longer about the fact that, lives needed to be safeguarded. It was more about, the Tory government needed to be safeguarded, because they could never have sort of survived that kind of blunder. But I've got this from John Miller, right? This is one of the parents of one of the Red Caps who was killed in Iraq during the Iraq War, if you remember, when six young men were brutally murdered by the Iraqis. He says to me this. He says, "This Afghan debacle is boiling my blood. I recall at a meeting with John Hutton at the Ministry of Defence on the eve of my other son being deployed to Kabul. He was at pains to tell me it was a NATO issue. I argued that there were 28 member countries signed up to NATO for the invasion of Afghanistan, so why was it only the UK and the US that were sending out our sons? My point being, why the hell is the UK taking all of the Afghans and none of the other so-called NATO members?" So that's another issue. We seem to be taking the bulk of all these people coming out of Afghanistan, and yet it was a NATO operation. Why aren't they going elsewhere?
Well, I don't know what the situation is with other, other countries and their Afghans who supported their forces and their administrators whilst they were there. I'd be amazed if other countries weren't taking people. But the key thing is, people are trying to say, was the super injunction put in place for protecting lives or for protecting the reputation of the government? The reality is it was done for both reasons. Yeah. There was obviously an element of self-interest. Ministers were obviously aware they were covering something up that would be deeply, deeply embarrassing for them politically. And at that time would potentially have been terminal for the government at the time, as it was. Obviously, the government got booted out anyway. But the key thing is this: in a sense, the fact that some ministers were trying to protect their reputations is a side issue. The key issue is the priority had to be, and has to be going forward, because sadly this is not the last time we are going to be in Afghanistan. You know, the nature of the world, we are going to be deploying overseas again. And when we do that, we are going to want people to help support and protect and facilitate our armed forces and our administrators. And if Britain gets a reputation as a country which basically throws these people out of the balloon, then we simply won't be able to operate.
No, I get that.
Again.
But again, it's a numbers game, though, Dan, isn't it? I mean, you know, I was in Bosnia briefly, not for very long, but I watched what went on, and you could see that there were some people who were hired as interpreters, and you could see that there were some people who were facilitators. But when the British Army was based in Vitez, which is where I was, there wasn't very many of them. You know, so the idea that we've somehow inherited what could be as many as over 100,000 people from Afghanistan is way out of proportion to the numbers who would have helped the 12,000 British troops who were there. Do you know what I mean?
No, I agree with that, and that's where I think ministers needed to be much more hard-headed. And I think ministers needed to say, look, we will guarantee the safety and security of those who have generally, you know, assisted our forces.
Yeah.
But we are not simply going to give a blanket commitment to everyone was on that list, because obviously, you know, it was an appalling data breach. But at the end of the day, the people who were on that list, and who had not been assisting our forces, had not been assisting the British authorities.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's a very hard thing to say, but I'm going to say it. Ultimately, the responsibility for ending up on that list rests with them.
Yeah.
And it goes the other way. We have an absolute, in my view, obligation to all those who assisted our forces while we're out there. And you will remember, you know, there was a big campaign actually, and you know, and I agreed with that, about how slow it was to bring out those people.
Well, this was why when we were talking about this story earlier in the week, I was saying, you know, the idea that this was all under a super injunction is kind of mad, because I remember having many conversations, maybe I even had some with you, about, you know, the speed with which it was happening, and how, you know, we were unsure of whether we were getting the right people out. You know, I remember the conversations about whether we should be bringing dogs out rather than people.
Yeah.
You know, all of that with pen farthing. You know, and there was plenty of conversation around the Afghan resettlement scheme. So why on earth they had to keep it, or pretend to keep it quiet, or keep it, you know, stum, away from the British public, it's beyond me.
Well, I think there's two things. Firstly, I mean, again, going back to my original point, the other thing people need to realise is, my understanding is, as a result of the efforts, the sudden scramble to try and get out of Afghanistan, everybody that was on the list, a number of people who genuinely should have been brought out because they had been helping our forces, then, as it were, slipped down the hierarchy of people who were being brought out.
Right.
So that was another problem. On the issue of what they were trying to cover it up, I mean, ultimately, and this is where we kind of move over into the Labour government, because I've seen criticism of John Healey and Labour on this, and as you know, I'm not, you know, won't hold back in criticising the government, but on this I've got sympathy. It's quite clear that they weren't trying to cover up the fact that people were coming, which is why there was that memo about how do we manage it, how do we manage the narrative, etc.
Yeah.
What they were trying to cover up was the reason why all these people were suddenly coming out. Now, as I said, I think that decision ultimately was wrong, giving this sort of this blanket commitment. But again, in fairness to ministers, they weren't covering up the numbers that people that were coming. They were covering up the reason they were coming, and obviously the muck up, and obviously underpinning all this.
I think they were covering all of it up. I disagree with you. I think it was all of it, because what about that memorandum that we now know about that was sent out in September of last year, basically noting that a lot of the places where the rioting took place over the summer after Southport were places where an awful lot of Afghan refugees had been sent.
Well, obviously, that, as I said, you know, there were various components in relation to the decision, and there were various elements in relation to it, and there were various factors floating around. And frankly, given the nature of the scandal and the initial cover-up and the initial muck-up, obviously a factor, you know, how people, these very large numbers of new asylum seekers were going to be integrated into these communities. I mean, we're already seeing, you know, we haven't even come on to that yet. We're already seeing, you know, the issues in areas of the country where asylum seekers are being housed, and the tensions that's creating.
Right.
So the fact that ministers were cognizant of that and discussing that, I'm not going to criticise them for that, especially given, in fairness to Labour, this was not a blunder of Labour's making. This was something they inherited from the previous government. This is one that does rest squarely on the shoulders of previous Tory government.
Yeah. But I think it's compounded by the way that Labour then handled it, because I think, again, they got it wrong. They could have lifted the injunction earlier. They kept the injunction on, bizarrely, for longer than the Tories did.
I think I agree with that, but I do think, again, knowing how government works, because remember we're talking about ministers. Obviously, it was officials who ultimately made these blunders, and we know how the official machine seeks to protect itself. If you've got officials saying to ministers, "Look, minister, if you don't keep this super injunction in place, we haven't got everyone out yet. We haven't nearly got everybody out we need to get out. I'm just saying to you, Minister, if you lift the super injunction, it can place those lives at risk, and there's no guarantee the Taliban aren't going to march down their street in a week's time, kill them, and drag them out in front of the cameras, and that's going to be on you." If you're a minister presented with that, I can understand why you're going to, if you're presented with lives are at stake, ultimately you're always going to in that way. Now, did they get it right in this instance? No, I think objectively, and the judge was very clear ultimately that they hadn't. But I can understand why they got into the way they were, the process that led to this. But the whole thing, I mean, the real question is, how has no one lost their job?
Exactly.
In fact, how is nobody in jail? Not in jail. Yeah. I mean, these are vital.
Well, somebody pointed out to me,
secrets.
Nick Leeson, right, cost the economy or the company that he was working for, Barings Bank, 817 million quid. He did 4 years in prison and was called a rogue trader. The idea that this guy has pressed a button that's cost the country or the company of the UK PLC 8 billion quid. I mean, in anybody's game, this guy should be at least fired, if not prosecuted.
Yeah, and also what processes were in place? How was such sensitive information, how is it possible to distribute such sensitive information just at the click of a button?
Yeah.
I mean, this is,
it shouldn't be possible. It's incredible. It's a bit like you and I, having, say, I don't know, sort of secret company documents in our sort of personal email, and by accident sending them to a load of our friends. And you go, that shouldn't happen.
Anyone watching this programme who works for any organisation, it doesn't matter why, inadvertently distributed, huge amounts of sensitive data on their customers, on their customers' private information, they'd be sacked instantly. There wouldn't be any ambiguity about it.
No question. But, this is politics. This is the world we live in. Dan, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Dan Hodges there, a commentator for the Mail on Sunday. Let's get a voice note from Dean on votes for 16-year-olds.
Hi, Mike. This is Dean from Basingstoke. On the topic of 16 to 17-year-olds voting, I think it's clear that many will be heavily influenced by their parents and schools when it comes to who they should support. Personally, while my daughters will be 20, 24 by then, I'd still be encouraging them to think critically, and I believe they are already see for themselves that reform is the way forward. Even at a young age, they've witnessed the issues we face, and I'm confident they'll make their own minds. That said, 16 to 17-year-olds, that are highly impressionable, so it's vital that parents play a strong role in guiding them.
Dean, I agree, couldn't agree more. Thank you very much indeed. Dan in Staffordshire says this: I woke up annoyed, come to work, switched on talk for your show, Mike, which I love, by the way, and you've cheered me up greatly by annoying most of your woke guests. Keep it up for mine and everybody else's entertainment. I certainly will. Here's something for your entertainment. Here's a gaffe from Ian Collins.
Even understanding all of that, there is naturally, and in Lincoln, you're certainly not immune from the immigration debate over there in your constituency. What do you say to those people? Say, well, hang on a second, this is a lot of people, a lot of assimilation needed on this, coming from a culture that is very much at odds with ours.
Ian, it's a very understandable mistake to make, but I'm not in Lincoln, I am Lincoln.
So I do apologise. You're in Spelthorne, yes.
And my constituency is
the classic.
But don't worry.
It's like when I get called Colin rather than Ian. But it's easily done. But either way, I wouldn't expect you to speak on behalf of Lincoln either, for that matter. But you understand all the imperatives around immigration, of course.
That's great. I hadn't seen that. Lincoln Park, brilliant. Asking you for good news, right, about what you're up to. How about this? Hi, Mike. As usual, this time of the morning, I'm on an endless golden beach 6 miles north of Aberdeen. My 2 dogs by my side and not another soul in sight. Great start to Friday. Love the show, even if it does raise my blood pressure. That's Bob in Aberdeen. And Peter and Gwyn say we're boarding the Queen Mary 2 this morning, heading for a week in the Norwegian fjords. It's the escaping Starmer cruise. We'll be taking you with us. Brilliant. Piling for the fjords, and one here from somebody else. Let's see if we can get this one in. This is from Tracy in Worcestershire. It's our 38th wedding anniversary today, and we're off to stay at a hotel run by Down staff in Minehead. There was a documentary done about it a year ago, and we were really looking forward to our 3-night stay. Brilliant. Have a great time. Superb. It's 9:25. Kate Hoey, Baroness Kate Hoey, coming next.
16 and 17-year-olds will be allowed to vote for the first time across the whole of the UK. This brings the whole country in line with Scottish and Welsh elections. We're going to let kids vote. Brilliant. It may well end up backfiring on this government. I think this is genuinely insane. We don't let kids buy cigarettes or booze, but well, without their fake ID, obviously, but we're going to let them vote over who runs the country. This is properly and utterly insane.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:29. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Alex Phillips will be here, of course. Plank of the Week coming up at 7 o'clock tonight. And then James Well, interviewed by Nigel Farage. James's last interview, he's calling it. And we, of course, wish James well. But he has been battling terminal cancer for a couple of years now. And we're hoping that he's going to be around for quite a long time yet to come. But he's very, very ill. Talking to Nigel Farage in his final interview. That goes out tonight at 10 o'clock. Alan in Middlesbrough says this: my sister is an A&E nurse in Teesside's main hospital. Recently, a migrant was admitted to A&E with stab wounds after an altercation with another migrant. He couldn't be saved as he lost too much blood. He had been reluctant to go to hospital earlier as he was here illegally. Nothing reported locally. Radio silence, more costs associated with migrants and more secrecy. And that is the problem. Secrecy seems to be the order of the day. Let's get a voice note from Mark on Jaguar.
Well, that was a great discussion with Steve Berry. And I, for one, are looking forward to Jaguar making shoes. In fact, I'll be the first to buy a pair of the pink suede loafers with fluffy bobbles on the front so I can strut down to Witherspoons in them. That'll be fantastic.
Mark, thanks very much indeed. I did say, because when they've stopped making cars, they're going to start making shoes. Let's talk to Baroness Kate Hoey now, independent peer, ex-Labour MP, of course. Kate, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Secrecy seems to be the order of the day. I mean, we've had a whole week of uncovering the dreadful super injunction that was imposed on us by Grant Shapps so that none of us could ever find out about all these Afghan migrants that were being shipped in. It now turns out that Keir Starmer's done a deal with the European Union in which we're going to have to hand over a bucket load of money for the privilege of being told what to do about our food standards and our carbon market.
Yes, well, I mean, this deal, I think what we always need to remember, and we certainly would, who were Brexiteers, that the European Union is a very good negotiator. Yeah. And so what they agree is always in the small print, and that never gets the publicity. Now, of course, the deal hasn't finally been signed off, but of course, now we are getting more detail, and it's very clear that he has signed up to something that is actually making us, taking the rules from Brussels, but with no say, absolutely. And this is part of his strategy and the Labour government strategy to slowly move back into the European Union, because it won't be very long before some people, Labour government, will be saying, well, hang on, if we're going to do this and we're going to pay, then maybe we'd be better just going back in. And I think that is the real aim. And I think, Brexiteers and people who even they didn't vote to leave, have accepted we left, and I think many of them will find this quite cynical that this is the way now we're operating.
Very cynical, because people worry as well that it's not so much as they're being open about it, because you're quite right, they want to sort of sneak back in through the back door. I mean, presumably Starmer doesn't want to have another referendum, although there was a time when he did. I mean, what's the constitutional situation here? At what point can we say to the government, hang on a minute, we voted to leave the European Union. You can't just keep, mission creeping back.
Well, I think that's right, because more and more, if we find that we are really going into what's called dynamic alignment, everything the European Union does, we have to follow, then to me, that is us back in. Of course, even paying money in, and we've no idea how much they're going to charge us for allowing us to have the same standards. And the irony is, of course, the ridiculousness is that we already, between the European Union and us, just automatically have more or less the same standards. But what they don't want is us to be able to go off on our own and do things that are going to make us more competitive. So I hope that, the courts these days seem to want to get involved in everything. Yeah. So perhaps at some stage there will be an opportunity to actually say, look, this is not what people voted for. And he would not go for another referendum. No, you're quite right on that. But he did argue for it very, very strongly when he was in Parliament. He's responsible. The Prime Minister is responsible more than anyone else in Parliament, apart from perhaps Hilary Benn. The two of them were totally responsible for the 3 years of terrible delay, which cost us so much in terms of getting a good deal eventually and making people feel very frustrated. It was shocking.
Yeah, it really was. And so in terms of what they could do next, I mean, they've done this food standards alignment. They're now doing carbon markets and trying to make some kind of green alignment as well. What else could they do next? I mean, what would they go for next, do you think? I mean, they've talked about defence, I suppose, haven't they?
Yeah, well, of course, they're already moving closer in terms of defence, and no one objects to cooperation in between European countries. But I mean, we do not want to get ourselves tied into a European kind of army that would actually not allow our own generals and so on to be absolutely in charge. I mean, we still have to see NATO, whatever the problems, as the crucial, deterrent and a body that is going to protect us. So they could move more on that. But I think what he's doing is that he obviously loves being abroad and meeting all these leaders. Yeah. Bringing them in. He's gradually going around them. He's clearly decided that France and Germany are the two countries that he wants to become totally tied in with. Right. And, who knows the details of some of the deals he's signing, even with Germany yesterday.
Yeah.
It's all a big mystery. And while he's playing around being a foreign, wanting to be this great, seen as this great international diplomat, the country's kind of falling to pieces, and he's bringing in ridiculous things like votes at 16 to hide it all up.
It is ridiculous. In fact, let's play a little clip, because if you can make head nor tail of what this treaty is, you're a better man than I am, as they say. Check this out.
It's a privilege to have you here today, particularly to sign this Kensington Treaty, which is a very special treaty because it's the first of its kind ever, if you can believe it, between our two countries. Yeah. And I see it very much as evidence of the closeness of our relationship as it stands today, the strength of our values, the strength of our joint approach, but also very much as a statement of intent, a statement of our ambition to work ever more closely together, the closest of allies, and whether that's on defence, security, trade, the economy, energy, covers so much in this treaty. And so this is a really historic signing of a historic agreement.
It's an historic agreement, it's a statement of intent, it's a statement of ambition. What is it?
It's just, I mean, all I heard
rubbish,
from
it.
Yeah, all I heard from it was that they were going to sort of raid a few warehouses in Germany to try and stop, boats being built that were bringing migrants. It is, but he clearly feels more comfortable in those kind of situations than talking about what's happening to people's living standards, and actually talking about the boats issue as such. It was quite. I don't know who he's going to see now. I suppose Trump will be the next one, but he won't get away with quite the same.
Well, no, because he won't. He's very shy around Trump, isn't he? He doesn't like to upset him, so he kind of creeps around him.
And of course, he's made sure that Trump is not going to get the opportunity to address Parliament.
Yeah, which is shocking in itself, actually, to be honest. I mean, here he is.
Well, I'm surprised Trump hasn't seen it as a bit of not quite treating him in the same way that he treated Macron.
Yeah, no, I'm amazed that Trump hasn't. Maybe he just hasn't been paying attention. But as soon as he finds out, he's not going to be happy, is he?
He might discover it the day before and pull out.
Exactly right. Listen, great to talk to you, Baroness Kate Hoey, there, independent peer and ex-Labour MP. Let's get a voice note from Russ.
Mike, Russ from Hertfordshire here. Is there no way that we can go back and have a look at these bogus claims? And if they are found to be bogus, they've come here on false pretences. We know they're from Afghanistan, and can't we send them back? Surely we can be able to do that. Thanks, Mike. Bye-bye.
Yeah, absolutely. We should be able to. We are just sick of illegal economic immigrants now and the impact it's having on our country, says Michelle. They should be in tents in a secure compound. Well, somebody suggested that. Put them into Glastonbury. They've got plenty of ready-made fences and they've got plenty of ready-made tents. Just move them all in there. You can get about 300,000 people in that place. No problem at all. Bill from Thailand says, with all this illegal immigration going on, what do the government do? Have a summer recess. It's disgusting. And Els Bells from Shropshire says, the situation in Epping last night was calm and organised until the police decided it was OK to escort loads of morons from the anti-racism crew into the fold. And that was when it all went wrong. Yeah, I think you're right. Coming up, we're going to talk to Luke Johnson. We're going to find out why hospitality is suffering so much at the hands of this government's economic policies. Absolutely ridiculous. 0344 499 1000. Coming up to very nearly 20 minutes to 10.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through for another 20 minutes up to 10 o'clock. Of course, Alex Phillips will be here. I left home at 16, says Louise, 14 years ago and couldn't buy nail scissors to cut my nails, but would be expected to vote? Question mark. Well, you don't have to. Peter in Suffolk says, morning, Mike. I drive a BMW because it's a well-built, reliable car. If Jaguar had been the same, I would have bought one of those. It's as simple as that. Yeah, I think they sort of undercut their own business, didn't they, in the end? One here from somebody who doesn't give a name. Jaguar started to get away from their image and brand, making models that didn't look like Jaguars. I had several F-Paces, which were really good, but because they stopped manufacturing them and are now turning to electric, I will never touch another Jaguar again. People are very loyal, you know, people like a brand, people like a particular thing. Sometimes they like a particular restaurant, sometimes they like a particular pub, sometimes they like a particular car. Let's talk to Luke Johnson now, entrepreneur, former chairman of Pizza Express, of course, Channel 4, and the Royal Society of Arts, because a story came out yesterday, thanks to Rachel Reeves, who's on the front page of the FT again today because of all the terrible trouble that's being caused in the economy. Reeves under fire as Britain sheds jobs for a fifth month. Staff numbers down 41,000 in June. The budget and the trade war with the US have been cited. But it turns out that hospitality in restaurants in particular and in bars and all sorts of other places have been hit terribly badly because of the devastating effect of the national insurance increases. Luke, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Thanks very much for joining us. UK Hospitality says the sector has lost 84,000 jobs since last year's budget because of the national insurance contributions. It's sort of really turbocharged into April, and it's not going to get any better, is it?
No, I'm afraid not. For any restaurant, really, labour jobs is the biggest cost, and obviously thanks to the national insurance increase and indeed the extension of the national insurance to virtually all staff and the big hike in the national living wage, labour costs have gone up sharply, and this is happening in the wake of things like lockdowns and the huge energy price increases over the Ukraine war.
Yeah.
And it's been a terrible 5 or 6 years, and this is, I fear, for many businesses, the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I've been speaking to friends of mine who run restaurants and who own bars and things like that, and they used to tell me it was very difficult to get hold of staff as well. This is before Rachel Reeves came along, because of what happened after Brexit. A lot of European staff that used to work there perhaps went home and weren't here anymore for that. But it seems kind of ironic that we've got kind of record numbers of people coming into the country from elsewhere in the world, and yet we can't find enough staff to work in restaurants.
Well, one of the problems is, I'm afraid to say, that the benefit system, the welfare system, undermines the incentives to work. Because I think if you claim the absolute maximum, arguably you can earn more than a very basic wage.
Yeah.
And so why would someone do in a kitchen or waiting on customers when they can do nothing and get paid for it? And unfortunately, I think it's one of the legacies of furlough and lockdowns, when people were paid to stay at home. It was a mad policy.
Yeah.
And it encouraged people to think this is acceptable, and it's not.
No,
it
exactly.
Makes people happy, and it destroys the economy.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I can't believe that I still have to have these conversations with people. I mean, London, it seems to me, has kind of recovered to some extent. But even people in, like, Borough Market, not a million miles from this office, will tell me that, yes, there's loads of people in Borough Market, but say on a Friday night, they're nowhere near as busy as they used to be. And I've got cab drivers telling me that Friday nights, for example, which used to be full of people coming into London from the outskirts of places like Essex and Surrey and Hertfordshire, it just doesn't happen anymore because an awful lot of the nightlife has just disappeared.
That's true, and I also think that a lot of people are very anxious about the prospects and the economy, and as you say, many businesses are shut. I know of businesses that are, there's a chain I know where they are thinking of shutting 40% of their sites, and dozens of sites, because the prospects for the rest of this year and next year are poor. And of course, going out to eat or drink is discretionary, and people do it more when they're feeling confident. And at the moment, I'm afraid to say, sentiment is poor.
Yeah, right. And I mean, as far as the national insurance increase is concerned, because we've seen them doing so many U-turns since they've been in the past year, is there any chance that the hospitality sector can put enough pressure on the Chancellor's office to maybe reverse it?
I think if that were going to happen, it would have happened by now. I'm very sorry to say that I think this government are economically illiterate.
Yeah.
And don't understand the harms they're causing, and don't really understand how a market economy works. And none of them have ever run a business or met a payroll or faced the idea that if their company goes broke, then their house is repossessed.
Right.
Very few of them have even worked in the private sector.
Yeah, right.
I think they think that it's a milk cow that will always deliver for ever more government spending. But as the Afghan scandal shows, governments so often spend our taxpayers' money very badly indeed and wrongly.
Absolutely right. And they seem to think as well that investment equals government money, i.e. taxpayers' money, being put into something which then just disappears into a massive black hole.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is that an economy thrives when there's private investment coming in, which historically, actually, we've done very well in this country. Unfortunately, it's dropping precipitously because investors are put off. They see a socialist government who doesn't understand markets or business, who is overtaxing, over-regulating. And I speak to these people every week, and Britain is bottom of the list. They don't see sterling or our country as an attractive place to invest.
Yeah. I know, it's shocking, really. I don't know how much worse it's going to get. Luke, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Luke Johnson there, former chairman of Pizza Express, Channel 4 and the Royal Society of Arts. Just to remind yourself who's running the government's economy for you, here's a bit of Rachel Reeves making a joke about being Chancellor.
Recently, on a visit to a primary school, a young girl said to me, "If you could have any job in the world, what would it be?" Now, given the events of the last few weeks, I suspect many of you would have sympathised if I had said anything but the Chancellor. But I didn't, because I am proud to stand here tonight and address you for a second time at Mansion House as the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Yeah, well, she's obviously got over that massive sobbing spree that we saw a couple of weeks ago. She's all right now. I don't know what it was. Nobody knows what it was. She didn't look great this week, though, mind you, on Wednesday. She still looks as if she was about to burst into tears. Paul from Rochester says, "Morning, Mike. Regarding allowing kids to vote, what if we end up with Father Christmas or the Easter Bunny? Santa doesn't reward bad behaviour, so I doubt he would approve of men breaking into our country. I might join the kids' ballot paper." There's a lot going on there. Morning, Mike, says Kevin in Sheffield. Regarding the very high energy prices, as an average working taxpayer, I feel I'm paying for my own energy use and energy bills for hotels that are housing migrants, as everything appears to be absolutely free if you come here illegally. On a lighter note, I'm currently on a 12-hour shift in a steelworks, and afterwards my little bit of pleasure will be going to the local pub and sinking a couple of pints and sorting the world out with good friends. Have a good weekend. What a great idea. I think I might do exactly the same thing. I've actually got lunch with one of my kids, actually. One of my sons is coming up to have lunch with me. Well, when I say to have lunch with me, for me to buy him lunch before he goes back home. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 10.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
What are you looking for here? An end. A real end.
Well, all of a sudden he's a big shot because he has the U.S. on his side. I am very disappointed with President Putin. He'll talk so beautifully and then he'll bomb people at night.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's very nearly 8 minutes to 10. Goodness me, I don't know where the time has gone. But Friday, it's Friday the 18th of July. I'm joined by Councillor Jamie McIver from Essex Ongar in particular. Jamie, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Just before we talk about what's going on out there with the Bell Hotel, because it's Friday, we try and cheer people up a bit. We've got a gaffe for you. This is Kevin O'Sullivan from earlier this week.
All that and so much more, so don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Tuesday night together. Got that in my ear there. Forgot the day. Good journalist I am, aren't I?
Kevin, poor old Kevin, doesn't know what day it is. Never mind. Jamie, let's talk about what's been going on out there in Epping, because it's got national attention now because of what's happened over the last few nights. Just going to play a quick clip of what looks like a very peaceful protest.
I just want to thank everyone for coming here today. We're all local people. We're all good, local, tax-paying people. We don't want trouble. We don't want fights. My question would be, why, and all due respect to the police, why are you allowing agitators to come and fight against us? Because you are inciting violence. We're not. You are. Mr. Starmer, I hope you're going to hear, I hope you hear this. Why are you letting 500-600 undocumented men come across the channel every day into this country? We don't know who they are, we don't know what their background is, but they don't share our values, they don't respect women, and they do not respect children. Yes! Yes!
I mean, that sums it up, really, doesn't it? That's exactly what's been going on. And tell us what happened last night.
Yeah, and that's Orla Minihane, who is someone I know very well, and she's absolutely right with what she said. And firstly, I want to make it very clear that this was a peaceful protest of grandparents with their grandchildren, mothers with their daughters, who came to the Bell Hotel to peacefully protest, to say we want it closed. And that's all that happened. And then, and I regretfully say this, I'm someone that backs the police all the way, and I do not condone violence in any form. It's unacceptable. And then what happened was the left-wing mob arrived at Epping Station. They were escorted miles away, this station, by the way, escorted all the way to the hotel, and then we got community friction. And the police, I think, I'm afraid on this occasion, operationally, the officers on the front line did what they were told. And they have a job and they have families. And actually, they were privately whispering a lot of our ears, we completely agree with you, don't tell anyone, sort of thing. But what I saw was the police, I'm afraid, operationally facilitate what felt like a deliberate act to stir trouble. And then there was trouble. And then people from outside of Epping arrived, and they caused trouble, and, you know, I'm afraid they need to feel the full weight of the law. But, you know, I was doing first aid to a cameraman who a police truck drove into.
I saw that.
Drove into him.
Right.
This is a member of the press. and the police had no reason to do that. There was police vans.
And you were saying as well that the police were imported from London. They were people there.
I mean, you've got a very sensitive community issue.
Yeah.
What were Essex police thinking importing a police force that has got the reputation? Well, let's just say they're famous for being no good, aren't they? The Met Police. They've been in special measures. They might even still be. And in come those police officers with the big vans, scaring the children, actually, which I thought was unacceptable.
Yeah.
And then, I actually saw them going around a roundabout, nee-nor, just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And then all the journalists were filming it to make out Epping's in chaos.
Yeah.
And, of course, that then raised the tensions. But what I saw local people who have had enough.
Yeah.
And it's not just the national government they've had enough of. They've had enough of the local government too, and they have every right to be.
Because it's local authorities who are putting these hotels into the use that they're being put into, isn't it?
Well, it appears that they only seem to react when it becomes, a community. It's, the boiling pot overflows, and then they start to react. But let's be very clear. I did not see one other politician there last night other than myself and a Reform Town councillor.
Right.
There was no other politicians there, simply standing and listening. And then this morning we wake up to tweets from local and national politicians say, isn't it a disgrace, the thuggish behaviour? I do not condone anybody throwing anything at a police van, but I also do not appreciate politicians from their ivory towers dictating to local people. By the way, some of these politicians complicit in overseeing in the House of Commons the mass wholesale immigration of this country and no borders, and actually a cover-up, as we've recently found out.
I mean, that is the worst thing of all, isn't it? Because, I mean, this week has been a real watershed, I think, for the ordinary people of this country. Certainly our listeners and viewers have just had enough. They're sick to the back teeth of it. We've now got what looks like possibly over 100,000 Afghan people coming to this country and living amongst us, when nobody was asked if that's what we wanted.
I blame the establishment, uni-party politicians, the Labour and Conservative and Liberal politicians that have overseen the decline of this country for the last two, 3 decades, actually. And they are the ones responsible for this because they have no plan. As Orla said, hundreds and hundreds of undocumented young fighting-age men arriving to this country and then being dumped into a hotel in a beautiful place like Epping where there's no infrastructure to support them. And I've got it in Ongar too. It is unfair on the people of Epping to have to live with that. And what's even worse is when they want to peacefully protest. There was not one police officer that took any leadership until 10:30 when they came and told us all to go home or we'll get arrested because of a dispersal order. Nobody stood up and said, right, everybody, there's some left-wing people coming down. We're going to put them there. You guys stay here. Let's keep this calm. Nobody took any leadership. And this is why I think, I'm afraid, the police have a reputation in this country and there's no public trust. Last night was a great example of that.
Yeah, absolutely right. And will there be more protests over the weekend, do you suspect?
I don't know. I'm not an organiser, but I will stand with the women and children of Epping every single day of the week if that's what we need to do to get this hotel closed.
Yeah, absolutely incredible stuff. And it's happening all over the country as well. Councillor Jamie McIver, thank you very much indeed, Reform UK Councillor for Ongar, very close by Epping there. And it's going to happen more and more and more. Bound to. Alex Phillips is here. Very good morning to you.
Just tidying up all my
I saw that. I was just waiting for you to stop throwing things over your shoulder.
What we have to do, when we get into the studio, and I could see you sort of like dragging it out, waiting for me to plug all my bits in and make my